Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
Welcome one, welcome all to SimSpeed TV this Saturday afternoon. One of the most popular series in the AusNZ sim racing community, making its long-awaited return here. It's the Panorama Drivers Club, GT4 and production cars around Mount Panorama for a 2-hour, 20-minute race. Nice, simple action coming to you live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and Kick. It's me, Reese Gardner, with David Haynes alongside me in the commentary box. Great to be with Hainesy once more, with Jake Kennedy handling production behind the scenes. Well, David, looking forward to this. It's going to be a fantastic little race here. We've got 4 classes of cars competing today at one of Australia's most iconic motor racing venues.
Yeah, my feeling of this series was always some kind of combination between the Bathurst 6 Hour and the Nürburgring VLN Championship. A series for drivers who just love this track. It's one of the best, and you can race it every week, every month, and not get sick of it. And it's for all of the reasons that we know and love it for. That climb up Mountain Straight, then across the top of the mountain, so challenging, no room for errors there. And then high speeds down Conrod Straight, big braking zone at the chase. More action and drama can happen there. And Murray's Corner, how about deceptively tricky with the way the apex curve is set up there as well, as all the strategy that can play out along a 6.2 kilometer racetrack for a 2 hours 20-minute race.
Yeah, there's no easy corner around this place, as pretty much every driver in the AusNZ SimSphere is aware. Every part of this circuit provides some kind of challenge, and we've got a wide variety of cars competing here today.
Something's missing off that map. It's missing the monorail.
Yes, certainly is. We'll see as we go through the format for today. GT4, of course, will show up as green on the overlays. We've got TCR, and then we've also got American Muscle in the Ford Mustang FR500S, which incidentally is going to be getting rain in the next season build. And then we have the Sport class, which is the Toyota GR86 Cup car. Lovely little variety of machines competing here today.
Yeah, it's good. The temptations to call them X, A1, A2, and B class or something like that around here. But again, all of them are very differently driving cars. So you can sort of pick, choose which one is going to suit the style of racing that you enjoy. Because obviously, the GT4 car is very quick, gripped up on slick tires. Then you go to the American Muscle class. You've got a V8, you've got a 6-speed H-pattern manual gearbox on road tires. And then the GR86 is very much for those who love their compact, lightweight cars.
Yeah, exactly right. And there's potential for the classes to be expanded in the future. For now, we see that TCR has a 60% fuel tank restriction. Every other class has a 70% fuel tank restriction. So we are likely to see at least one pit stop from all of our classes over the course of this race. How those strategy permutations are going to work out, we'll obviously find out as we go along. But the drivers are in the middle of their 10-minute qualifying session where they each get just one lap to set their time on the grid. And it's hard enough to get half a lap clean at Mount Panorama, let alone a full lap. So I think we might be seeing a few drivers taking it easy or not being able to get a time in at all.
Yes, shootout qualifying at Mount Panorama is always about balancing risk versus reward. And now I owe royalties to Mark Scaife, probably.
Yeah, most likely. Sam Muir, the first driver to set a time in the field in his GT4 BMW, currently remaining on provisional pole as Matt Stewart and Edward Foster get times in. So do Joshua Van Treek and David Johnson. Our GT4s making their way around very quickly here at this circuit. We have James Foster being the first of our TCRs to set a time. Bradley Seeney, fastest time in the Mustangs for the time being. We haven't seen any times from our Toyota GR86s yet. Daniel Stevens, one of the steadfast competitors in SimSpeed broadcast. He's on Zoom with us as per usual, absolutely wheeling that Mustang around.
Yeah, I hope he's a little more focused than his webcam is. I think it's getting a little confused with the moving graphics on the screens in front of him, 4 screens, and then look at that nice little flag box he's got going on there as well. That lets him know that his lap is complete, and that's about the end of qualifying for him. Checkered flag waving on them as they complete their first lap.
Yes, and Cameron Stubber going to be the first, or one of the first, actually the third, I should say, of our GR86s to come across the line. A 234.7. That would have put him in between Tony Baker and Darren Shannon, but it looks like the lap didn't count for him. What about Paul Saunders? Goodness me, a lot of curb usage at Murray's Corner as he comes to the line. A 2-minute 40.3. That is a solid 6 seconds off what Tony Baker was able to set at the front of the field. Patrick Solom, meanwhile, in car 191. We'll see what he can do to put himself amongst the GT4s. We have 14 GT4s competing in this race, easily the most popular of our classes. We've got 3 TCRs, 5 Mustangs, and 4 GR86s competing here today. So the other classes not quite as popular, but some good competition in all of them.
Yeah, and so of course with this one lap qualifying, the questions about who doesn't get to finish their lap. So I see Scott Griffith won't get a time to the board. Cameron Stubber obviously won't be talking about that, but I think anyone who's towed and been through the pit lane, it kind of erases them. So Milan Pyrak, Lachlan O'Keogh and Luke Hayden, I think, don't get any qualifying in this as well. The only driver left that I think could set a lap is this one right here, Henry King. How early do those brake lights have to come on? I tell you what, he gets pretty deep into the chase before he needs to woe it up. This is a heavy car, and it does reach some very good straight line speeds with that V8 that just keeps pulling. You've got gears to keep going through.
Yeah, you absolutely do. And I've been racing the Mustang competitively quite a bit this year in the American Muscle Series, so I can tell you a few things about this car. You can brake a bit later than you expect. Henry King currently 4th and 2nd last of the Mustangs with that 227.5. Another thing the Mustang drivers are going to have to watch out for is when the tires are cold, the car is obviously very low grip, but there's basically no traction, and you've got to be very careful on your turns there as Carl Ruwalt is going to abandon his TCR lap there in the Audi. So keep an eye out for the Mustangs to be sliding around quite a bit in the first couple of laps, but once the tires get up to temperature, those cars will get a lot more stable. But yeah, ABS on the Mustangs, so you can really go deep into the braking zones. So with that lap abandoned there from Carl Ruwalt, actually, he had already put a lap in. He was just completing an in lap, it seems. Looks like that's the majority of the field having set lap times here. They'll obviously be gridded by class when we get to the race itself, but some good times, particularly Sam Muir up at the top of our GT4 field in the BMW M3. Which will be replaced in the coming season. The new generation BMW M4 GT4 coming to the service very soon. Luke
now
Swan,
with 50% more sniffer.
Yes, 50% more sniffer indeed. Big old nostrils on the front of that car. Luke Swan's going to join him on the front row, with Miles Bond and Matt Stewart taking up our second row there. BMW obviously very popular here today. Joshua Van Treek is going to round out the top 5 in the Porsche Cayman alongside Carl Stevens in yet another BMW. And Carl Stevens, one of the administrators here at driversclub.net who run this series. Ben Collard in the Aston Martin starts in 7th alongside David Johnson. And then rounding out the top 10 in GT4, we have Hugh McLaughlin and Edward Foster. Patrick Solom, the last driver to set a time in that field. They'll be joined by Aidan Luthwaite, Milan Pyrach, and Scott Griffiths if they do take to the start. How are things looking in the other classes, David?
Well, across our touring cars, we've got James Foster and Dave Roberts on the effective front row for that class. And then you see Carl Ruwalt also had the lap time in 3rd. It was Luke Hayden who's in this class and didn't set a lap time. Went out on track, but didn't successfully complete a lap in qualifying. And then in the American Muscle, Bradley Seeney and Simon Mazzomo are up front. That's not a bad livery for Mez. And Daniel Stevens, and we saw Henry King as well. It looked super competitive in this class, just half a second around the mountain from 1st through to 4th there. And 4 of the 5 did set qualifying times. It's Lachlan O'Keogh who doesn't have one.
And then we get into the sport class. Tony Baker and Darren Shannon on the front row. They'll be joined by Paul Saunders and Cameron Stubber. who round out our 4 cars in that class. So a lot of time to be spent in this race, 2 hours and 20 minutes, as we said. So even if the field is small, there is still something to race for. And if you have problems early on, you can definitely recover. It's going to be a rolling start here. And I'm going to correct my statement from earlier. Actually, yeah, I am going to correct my statement because it looks like they are not being gridded by class. The drivers that didn't set qualifying times, they're going to be starting all the way at the back of the grid. So that means our final 3 GT4s, plus Luke Hayden in the TCR, Lachlan Okiho in the American Muscle class, and Cameron Stubber in Sport will be starting all the way at the back of the grid. Going to be some extra challenges for them in the first couple of laps.
Just run some numbers here, and GT4 stint length on a full tank is normally just over an hour these days. They're at 70% of that. If we get high fuel consumption, I reckon you're looking 3 stops for those GT4s up front. And of course, a similar story happens. The Mustangs run a little bit longer than an hour on a regular full tank, and it's a big tank in the Toyota GR86s as well. But yeah, GT4 definitely going to get well acquainted with where their pit crew is in that pit lane, which is of course set by the qualifying order. So if you're any of the drivers without a qualifying time, look out. You might find your pit crew way earlier in the pit lane than otherwise.
Yeah, exactly. Got to keep a close eye out. So if the likes of Luke, Lachlan and Cameron are listening into the broadcast, just beware of that. Pit entry at Mount Panorama is difficult enough, but if you're having to pull over instantly to find your pit crew, and yeah, that's an even greater challenge. It's a nice cool track though, 25 degrees Celsius. That means the Mustangs and the GR86s as well as the TCRs will have to be very careful on these opening couple of laps, but the GT4s are going to get off to their start here with Sam Muir leading the way out of Murray's Corner. The green flag will fly momentarily, and we'll be racing here in the Panorama Drivers Club, making its return here for August 2024. And Muir will lead the way into turn 1, followed by Luke Swan side by side for third. Miles Bond having to pinch on the inside of Hell Corner. Matt Stewart's going to get a better run there. The TCRs have gotten going themselves, and now we're about to see the American Muscle class go for it too. 4 cars taking to the start there, and Bradley Sini will lead the way, but I'm sure Mazomo's going to pile the pressure on there. And then there's the rest of the field up behind the Sport class. Big challenges already for Luthwaite, Pyrach and Griffiths in the GT4s, and well, a little bit of a messier start this time as they all try to make their way through.
Yeah, I was just thinking, look at that staggered start and how much it's cost these GT4s that didn't qualify. They're already 40 seconds behind their class leader off this race start. Here is the leaders up front in GT4, Sam Muir from Luke Swan, and Matt Stewart's the driver who's made a move in this class right up front, getting ahead of Miles Bond. Hugh McLaughlin also getting past David Johnson. Other than that, not a whole lot of change off that GT4 race start.
There is a change in the Mustangs though. Mazomo has gotten past Sini, who ran wide coming through turn 2 at Griffin's Bend, and that's something we're going to be seeing a lot of when the classes start overtaking each other. If you're caught on the outside at turn 2, there's a big crown in the road. You do not want to be on the left side of the track there. You have to get into the camber on the inside of the corner. We'll see how it all happened here. Mazomo drew alongside Sini on the way up Mountain Straight, and then braked hard in. Sini tried to get it turned in, but he was just too deep, thankfully avoiding the barrier.
Story of old as time there at turn 2 Griffin's Bend, with how aggressive the banking is, but only on the inside lane. Around the outside is super tough. Here's the end of Conrod Straight. The GT4 leaders super close still with the slipstream effect down that long straight. Highest speed I've seen, 259 kilometers an hour for Miles Bond, the driver we're on board with. But every other series does it. Let's just lie. They were doing 300 k's an hour on the way into the chase.
Yeah, that's amazing stuff. We'll certainly go with that statement there. Well, first lap complete then. Matt Stewart making his way past Miles Bond there to try and join his teammate Sam Muir at the front of the field, but Luke Swan holding strong as we got our first incident in TCR. Looks like Dave Roberts has unfortunately found his way into the gravel trap at the chase, and he's a long way behind his competitors now. TCR well spaced out, and it looks like like he might have done this on his own. Yeah, just carrying the brakes a bit too deep there into the chase. It's easy to do. TCRs, you have to wind the brake bias back to get the car rotated on the way in, and on cold tyres, that could be your worst enemy.
Yeah, just a little too ambitious, wasn't it? Here's Hugh McLaughlin, again, one of those names that's back in Panorama Drivers Club that we knew from the previous run-ins years and years ago.
Yeah, problem for him apparently at Griffin's Bend, too deep and losing the rear end, but that was a good recovery, I have to say. Could have been a lot worse than that. We usually see drivers overcorrect there, but Hugh managing to get it straightened out nicely.
Yeah, very nice. I thought that was going to end up in the wall. I thought that was going to end up being T-boned by someone, but it hasn't happened. So I'm going to give a shout out to some of the drivers that are back for the return of Panorama Drivers Club. So Sam Muir, definitely one of them leading GT4. James Foster, he did many of the previous editions of Panorama Drivers Club.
Yeah, certainly, and he's doing quite well at the front of the TCR field. In fact, it's just gone over 4 years since the last running of PDC. The last time it was run was the 15th of August 2020. It was right in the midst of the pandemic, so it's taken a bit for them to get this back together, but we're really glad that they have, because it's lovely to see all those cars out there strutting their stuff around Mount Panorama as they should, and we're already getting a fantastic battle for second in GT4. Sam Muir stretching the lead now to about a second at the front of the field. Luke Swan is starting to fall under pressure from Matt Stewart.
And then you've also got some of those other GT4 cars that we saw them work their way past the sport class cars on the race start. They've worked their way past most of the American muscle. Now they're starting to work their way through TCR. So Aidan Luthwaite, Milan Pyrak and Scott Griffiths have got the middle of the field to work through till they get to where they should be, behind the tail of GT4 front-running pack, which is looking so interesting right now. Anytime you see them running this close like this, you know we've got quite a few pit stops to go. You know this could be a strategy race. Who, by about lap 2, goes, you can see the leader, maybe it's time to start saving fuel.
Yeah, I reckon I'd be doing that. Obviously, if you're within a second or so of the car in front, you're getting full benefit of the slipstream down Mountain Straight and Conrod. There's been a position change here. It's Ben Collard, I believe, and Kyle Stevens changing places at turn 2, and a nice clean move there. Collard now up into 6th spot, one place up from where he started. We move our way back then to the battle for second in GT4. Matt Stewart still harassing the back of Luke Swan here, who we've seen have some fantastic runs in the GTC Championship, part of the V8 Scops support series, and that 9.5 SimSport Porsche Cayman certainly fast, but at the moment it seems like the Cayman can't quite match the BMW.
They're always going to have different characteristics in different parts of the racetrack, and I've talked about Miles Bond, who had the fastest straight line speed that I've seen. BMW, I don't know, it just seems to pull more consistently, but when the little Porsche gets into its sweet spot in the rev range, it can accelerate really well through those. So they pull differently, different parts of the straight. They'll corner differently. They'll have a different appetite for curbs at the apex and at the exit.
Yeah, indeed. I love the differences between the GT4s. We haven't seen much of an appearance from the other brands represented in that class. We don't have any Mercedes competing in the field. We do have an Aston Martin, which is nice to see. But
what power is that?
What was that, sorry?
What power is that Aston Martin?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, true. It is a Mercedes V8 that powers the Aston Martin. I completely forgot about that. Close relationship between Aston and Mercedes when that was being built. Meanwhile, Looks like battle's on for second in American Muscle. Dan Stevens having to keep an eye out for Bradley Sini, who's actually fallen back to third. Remember how he lost the lead to Mazzomo on lap 1? Well, he's lost another position. It seems like though Sini was able to get his 1 lap pace down, Pat, it seems like his race pace just isn't quite there. And you saw he was having trouble with the rear end coming through the chase. Look at the lead Mazzomo's got now.
Yeah, it's over 2 seconds to Daniel Stevens, now finding himself a bit under pressure. Both of them, though, still struggling with the rear of the car moving around a little bit through the chase. Just in the middle of the corner, but then also getting to the power on these things.
Yeah, you can get on the power quite quickly in the Mustang, I find, but it's very easy for the rears to break traction out of the slow corners in second gear. But you don't use second a lot of points around this circuit. I think it's only really the exit of Forest Elbow where second is really used. Oh, yeah.
Exit of the Dipper. He's around in the wrong spot.
No.
A super tough spot. He's lost the rear wing, obviously. He is going to get out of there. Man, clearly he's had a big one at that part of the racetrack. It just drops away 2 stories in the middle of the corner.
Yeah, such a shame for Hugh. And again, it looks like something he did on his own here. He just lost the rear on just before the car gets slightly airborne. You need to keep it nice and straight through the Dipper there. Otherwise, that's exactly what happens. So Hugh will have to make his way back to the pits in short order here, I'd imagine. Or will he stick it out here and try to keep going without that rear wing stabilizing the back end of the car?
See, I think he lost the rear wing when he got in reverse gear. I don't think he lost it in the initial impact, which is odd, but I can understand you don't want to hang about in that spot there. It's blind on the exit of the Dipper. No one knows you're there until they're about to T-bone you, so you don't want to hang around. He's out. He's missing the rear wing now, and the car's not going to be great in a couple of other ways. Here we go.
Yeah, he still had the rear wing when he spun. Oh, there it is. Oh, it was just that little head back into the wall there that got it for him. Oh, things are starting to get interesting up at the front of GT4 as we just saw Kyle Stevens getting back past Ben Collard for P6, but just as that happened, this battle has erupted here for second. Matt Stewart has gotten past Luke Swan, and now Miles Bond is looking to get it done here. Now, what happened to Luke? It looks like the exit of turn 2 not being to his liking there, and a much better exit for the number 12. Got it done round the outside on the way into the cutting. Nicely done.
And Porsche was wide through the middle of the corner and then had a snap when he was trying to gather it up a little bit wide, perhaps on some of the dirty stuff, on some of the marbles on the exit of the corner there, and very, very well done to spot the weakness and just calmly drive around the outside for Matt Stewart. The other sort of GT4 driver to watch, you may have noticed it, Aidan Luthwaite, one of the drivers who had no qualifying time, started from behind the sport class, worked his way up through sport, American Muscle, now past all the TCR cars, and 3 laps in a row, resetting the fastest lap of the race. Aidan Luthwaite he's not going to need to worry soon about that bad qualifying because he'll be with the leaders.
Yeah, he'll be with them indeed, as the first bit of traffic now for our GT4s looks like just making their way past Paul Saunders there in the number 83 GR86, and Luke Swan's in trouble again. Miles Bond trying to draw up on him here, and wow, yeah, good stuff there from Miles Bond. It looks like Swan actually gave that up. Maybe he recognises that he's running into a few potential problems in that number 55, and we'll have to maybe just dial it back a little bit, focus on saving fuel, focus on strategy. Meanwhile, battle on here in TCR. Carl Ruwalt now ahead of Dave Roberts here, and they've got a GT4 coming up on them here. That's Scott Griffiths, who was one of the cars who started at the very back of the field, didn't set a time in qualifying. This will make things interesting. The actual speed between GT4 and TCR down the straights isn't that much of a difference, so they'll let Griffiths by. At the same time, they've got to be careful not to get into him here as they try to negotiate this battle.
Yeah, so have I got this right? Roberts spun off at the chase, ended up behind Ruwalt, and now has just started to catch him again for the second place. Is that what's happening here?
Yeah, Yeah, it looks like it. He's made up quite a gap as well, because remember when we saw that replay for Roberts, it didn't look like there were any cars around him. So either Ruwalt's had a problem himself, or Roberts has just been that fast. Not quite sure. We'll have to figure that out later. But in any case, Dave Roberts is certainly looking to get second place back. Yeah, you see he made up 3 seconds on Ruwalt on lap 3. So that tells me that either Ruwalt had a problem or Roberts was just driving like an animal trying to get that position back.
Certainly interesting now, and we do have a couple of different TCR models, but this is Audi versus Audi, so they've got the same gear ratios, they should have the same straight line speed, same strengths in some of the same places. The class leader is in the Hyundai i30N sedan in Australia, but then something else on iRacing.
Elantra N is what it is on iRacing. So, yeah, that makes sense there. In any case, Kyle Stevens and Ben Collard, they've been fighting super hard over the course of this whole run here. I've just gone back here to see Ruwalt. His third lap, it didn't look like there was anything particularly wrong with Ruwalt's lap, but yeah, it just seems like he was just backing off early on. We'll see the battle as well for our leader in the sport class, Tony Baker. He's been getting some good runs going, but now our GT4 sixth-place battle makes their way past him. And they also have David Johnson and Edward Foster fighting over 8th and 9th just behind as well. You see the speed difference between GT4 and GR86 as it looks like our first pit stop is on here. Hugh McLaughlin, obviously part of that is to repair the damage he suffered earlier.
Yeah, the number 25 going to be the first to make a pit stop, and mainly because of that damage. But I think he might have just stayed out to a window here that he doesn't need to make an extra stop in this race. If it was going to be a 3-stop race, I think he can still do that stopping now.
Yeah, so he'll get that damage repaired, obviously spend a bit more time in the pits getting that repaired. I'm not too sure what the fast repair situation is in PDC, but yeah, it looks like there is no fast repair being used, if there is one available, for Hugh McLaughlin. And yeah, we're getting...
0.
Yep, 0 fast repairs. Okay, cool. Yep, we've just confirmed that. So, yeah, McLaughlin's going to be spending quite some time in the pits there, but you never know. He could certainly come back. There also is the possibility that we have an iRacing safety car if there is a legit incident that warrants it. So that could be a chance for McLaughlin to catch back up as well.
He's already got a new rear wing on, so there's some other little body panel stuff. Maybe you wouldn't worry about that if the suspension was still fine. Before the crash, his lap times were sort of 2:16s. Afterwards, he was doing sort of 2:17s. So I think the car was not right, but it wasn't atrocious. So it should be. Maybe it just adds an extra minute or so in his repairs.
Yeah, maybe so. Well, yeah, he's out of the pits now. It looks like. No, actually, no. I was looking in the area of the field that I saw him on my timing screen before, and I thought, oh, he's out of the pits. But no, he's fallen back down behind our American muscle cars. He's been in the pits now for 1 minute and 40 seconds. So we'll leave him to that and continue our focus on this battle here between Ruwalt and Roberts. Still fighting over second in TCR. James Foster is a long way ahead of these guys. In fact, he's got nearly 27 seconds over Ruwalt here, who hits the wall on the exit of Forest Elbow. That will be the chance that Dave Roberts needs to get by. Ruwalt's going to break the slipstream. Roberts with enough momentum to draw alongside down Conrod Straight, but he'll be on the outside in the braking zone for the chase. He'll be hoping that he gets by through this right-hand kink. It looks like he's far enough ahead that Ruwalt might have to yield, but we'll see how hard he decides to push on the brakes. No, he's just going to let him have it.
Well, driving a TCR into the wall on the outside of the elbow, Nicolas Kona eat your heart out. And Roberts goes up into second, Ruwalt back into third place there. I feel like Roberts had just a little bit more pace, but not oodles and oodles more. So it took him a while to get in front. I think he should be able to just stay there for now.
And the battle for the lead in the Mustangs has started to close up as well. Look at that. Daniel Stevens taking 0.6 of a second out of Simon Mazomo on the last lap. Mazomo, I think, just managing the pace at the moment, but Stevens, ever since he got past Sini, has had a fantastic run of pace. Bradley has dropped off the back of this pack. We'll just see him peek over the hill there in the background. Yeah, Bradley Sini, our pole sitter, big distance behind the lead battle at the moment, but you never know. These guys slow each other up. He could certainly be back in the fight, but both Mazomo and Stevens try to race as clean as they possibly can, and I know from experience that Dan Stevens certainly is one of the cleanest battlers in AusNZ, at least from the broadcasts that he's made appearances on here on SimSpeed TV. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this fight works out.
He needs to move his gear shifter to the other side for this car.
Yeah, he certainly does, and needs to get an H pattern done there as well. Looks like he's still using the sequential shifter, but at the very least, taking a hand off the wheel to shift, that is the basic pattern in this car. And he gave us a wave as well. Obviously, Dan likes to listen into the SimSpeed broadcast while he's driving. Shout out to you, Dan. Good to see you here racing in the Mustang as well.
Look, you can see us on the monitor up the top there.
Oh yeah, you can.
Yeah, so that's how it is.
Yeah, look very closely at that top monitor. That is the SimSpeed broadcaster you can see there. So yeah, we'll see what Stevens can do across the top of the circuit here. It looks like Mazomo has a little bit more of an advantage on him across the top, but Stevens is close enough to get the benefit of the slipstream, so he'll have to focus on his exits from Forest Elbow here to try and stay in touch with Mez. And out of Forest Elbow they come. Nice smooth exit from both cars. Stevens, of course, losing a little bit of time through the S's, but as you'll see on the rear view from Mazomo, Stevens will start to pick up the slipstream from here and will make up a little bit of time down Conrod Straight. Now, it's unclear just how long the Mustang will be able to go here, but maybe this is an opportunity for Stevens to save fuel a bit and ultimately shorten his final pit stop when it comes around. Of course, that is the whole goal of fuel saving, isn't it? There'll be probably a couple of pit stops for the Mustangs in this race, but if you can shorten the final one, it'll be a massive advantage. Meanwhile, Kyle Stevens getting back past Ben Collard there. BMW back ahead of the Aston, and I'm sure this battle's going to continue for quite some time. Both of these drivers seem to be very solid and I'd say similar on pace. We've got 3 battles on track at the moment, the 2 that you're seeing at the moment, and Matt Stewart and Miles Bond also within a second of each other from time to time for second overall. And it looks like our lead battle here in the Mustangs is going to get involved with the lead battle in the GT4s, as it looks like McLaughlin has gotten an iRacing black flag. He only just came out of the pits, but evidently either an unsafe entry or speeding or an unsafe exit has meant he's going to have to take another visit there.
Probably either speeding or unsafe exit, you'd imagine.
This is something that we're going to be seeing a few times here. The GT4 leader up behind the lead battle in American Muscle, and he's going to have to pick and choose where he puts his car alongside. It's very difficult to make passes across the top, and you can see that he's lost a lot of time there to Matt Stewart, and Dan Stevens backing right out of it. He doesn't want to interfere too much in this battle, but man, the 2 BMWs at the front of the field here resplendent in their orange and purple. Now in that 1-2, but Miles Bond putting the pressure on Matt Stewart here, as now they have to make their way past Mazomo. They won't poke their nose out coming into Forest Elbow. They'll wait until the straight to get it done here.
Yeah, but they do have an advantage pulling off the corner, an advantage in the straight line speed as well, and you see Bond has set that up so well, right into the slipstream and Matt Stewart down the straight.
Well, look at that run. This is a very strong slipstream here from Miles Bond, and he's going to go for it at the chase, but he'll be on the outside coming into the braking zone. Will Matt Stewart yield here? Oh, he's going to try and fight it in the braking zone. Bond has to go wide, but sometimes the outside line is where you want to be. And Miles Bond makes his way up into second.
Very nice. Hugh McLaughlin's back on the lane again. The black flag.
Yeah, and it looks like since he's going for a stop here, that would have been a speeding penalty, I think. Because I think those give you a stop and go of about 40 seconds or something like that. Yeah, and there we go. With 43.6 seconds stopped in the lane, McLaughlin will emerge back out onto the racetrack. And despite all of that traffic, looks like the ebb and flow has favoured Stevens. He backed out early to let our leaders go, and he's been rewarded for that by still being within a second of Simon Mazzomo.
Well, we've been racing long enough, it's certainly starting to get interesting with some of the traffic. So you have all of the GR86s have been lapped by the GT4s. All of the American Muscle have been lapped now, and there's going to be some more TCR cars that they start getting to eventually. And then you're seeing things like the American Muscle and the TCR beginning to lap a couple of the sport class cars, the GR86s. So it all gets quite complicated now, and the ability to cleanly work through the traffic becomes key, because there are plenty of places you can uncleanly cut through the traffic between about the cutting and the elbow.
Yeah, and this is one of the places where it gets a little interesting as Josh Van Treek passes Daniel Stevens at Skyline, and then there's the sixth place battle in GT4 right behind as well. Those two have been catching up to Van Treek, actually. Van Treek running in fifth in GT4 at the moment as it's back on for second here. It looks like Matt Stewart and Miles Bond still have a few things to say about this fight, and, well, Luke Swan starting to catch back up again as we have a problem in TCR. That's the number 16 of Luke Hayden, the Honda Civic around at the start of Conrod Straight. And Matt Stewart will make his way back past Miles Bond at the chase. Luke Swan sees an opportunity to get himself back into the fight here. And what happened here to Hayden? Looks like might have been either Bond making contact or no, he was just going deep in the elbow. And on the exit, oh no, that's a shame. But I think probably a racing incident more than anything, because looking at that angle, it didn't seem like Bond had many places to go.
It would have been confusing from the perspective of the GT4 driver, because they're offline braking down the inside.
Yeah.
It looks like they're going to stay tight on the exit of the corner, and then they kind of come across just before the famous concrete wall ends. Made it famous there. Dick Johnson and Nicolas Kona.
Yep, this is the view from Miles Bond here. You see that he probably spooked Hayden a little bit and couldn't get on the brakes in time, did the Civic. And then, well, yeah, you could see he was expecting Hayden to stay tight, but he didn't.
Where's Ben Collard gone?
That is a good question. He's dropped out of the server, it looks like. Oh dear, that's such a shame for our only Aston Martin in the field. I always like seeing those Astons out there, but it seems that Ben Collard has run into some technical issues. Luke Hayden coming into the pits, obviously, for damage, and probably to get his first pit stop out of the way nice and early. But
it's funny, because my experience is getting kicked out for not having a Collard shirt.
Oh my God. It didn't take us long, did it? We're not even half an hour into the race, and there's the first facepalm pun from Mr. Haynes. I'm sure we'll see a few more of those, or hear a few more of those before the race is out. But yeah, it's a shame for Collard. We'll obviously get confirmation that he's dropped from the server very shortly, but yeah, it looks like that car is not coming back. And so the sixth place battle is over between Stevens and Collard, and it'll be down to Stevens to catch up to Van Treek in P5. But this battle for second is still going off. Stewart, Bond and Swan, they are absolutely going at it around here.
Now, some of the traffic has done wonders for Luke Swan, because he looked, high and dry, and like the pace had dropped off for him. Maybe he'd mismanaged the tyres or something, and three BMWs had passed him and run away. But then maybe just had a moment to chill it out. We've had some cloud cover come over. The traffic held up some of the BMWs across the top of the mountain. He got back to him, and now suddenly he looks as good as he ever was. So Luke Swan has sort of looked like he was fading and then come right back into this.
Yeah, you can see the track temp has dropped down to 23 Celsius. So, yeah, interesting to note there. The race started at about 2:45 in the afternoon in sim time. It's now 3:15. So, evidently, the sun's starting to dip lower, more clouds coming over the circuit, and a cooler track temp. Have a look at Aidan Luthwaite's time there. 2:13. That's faster than anyone went in qualifying.
I'm going to say, who do you think is finding a bit of lap time with that cooler track temperature? Aidan Luthwaite, remember, he started this race about 45 seconds behind the race lead. He's now 32 seconds behind the race lead, up into 9th of 14 cars in class, and showing no signs of slowing down whatsoever. You see that difference to Sam Muir. We've taken 2 seconds, and then almost another whole second. Average all that out. Yeah, that's across 3 laps, almost 5 seconds.
Man, it's crazy pace from Aidan Luthwaite right now, and hopefully he doesn't run into any problems, because it'd be really nice to see him fight his way up there and make the battles at the front of the GT4 field even more interesting than they already are. So Miles Bond and Luke Swan out of the Forest Elbow at the moment. A bit of smoke there. I think maybe one of them suffered a lock-up on the way into the corner there. Swan, I think, having a bit of a compromised exit. It might have been him. We'll have to wait and see on that.
Yeah, so for a long time now, Luthwaite's had that fastest lap of the race in class and reset it a couple of times. Only driver to touch 2:13s as he goes at the moment. So that's interesting. That's interesting to watch. He's very much catching towards the leaders, but incrementally and from a long way back.
Yeah.
These are the next drivers that he's going to catch, though.
Indeed, Johnson and Foster. I just checked up on them myself. Foster and Johnson running low to mid 2:17s at the moment. Look at the time that Luthwaite has made up on these guys. Over 3 seconds over the last 2 laps. That's incredible stuff there from Aidan. And these guys will obviously be focusing on each other, but glance down to the F3 black box every so often and you'll find, oh dear, looks like the number 20 is starting to catch up and we might have to change our tack a little.
How quickly? Very quickly. There's another fastest lap of the race, if you don't mind.
God.
Track temperature at 23 right now. I think they've worked their way through a bit of the traffic now, and it's going to clear up for the next few laps. I don't think there's a track map graphic sorted by class, unfortunately, but yeah. Can I use the word clumping already? Is that too early in the broadcast?
No, I think it's a good time to start using the word clumping. This is a heck of a clump actually ourselves, because whoa, have a look at that. Miles Bond taking advantage of the traffic across the top there to get right alongside Matt Stewart, and the 2 BMWs will be slicing and dicing their way down the hill. It looks like Luke Swan's going to be looking at this and licking his lips. This is some fantastic racing we're seeing. Who was that they just made their way past? One of the GR86s. It was Tony Baker, who is leading the class at the moment. Let's see what happened here. So this is on board with Stewart.
He gets absolutely zonted, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. Hakkinen and Schumacher at Spa. Up the inside there. Had to compromise his line a little bit, and Bond almost got by him around the outside there. You wouldn't have seen it from that angle, but yeah, Bond was certainly alongside, coming across the top. So now the face of the battle changes again, about to come up on the second place battle in TCR. Dave Roberts and Carl Ruwalt. There's a bit more space between them now. Looks like Ruwalt's dropped off the back of Roberts, and we'll see how this affects the second place fight in GT4. Bond getting a little extra slipstream there. He's going to try and draw alongside Stewart potentially. Has to try and find a way through, but Stewart is not giving him any quarter. Dangerously
close to a block from Stewart there, if I'm honest with you. Yeah, 3 wide into turn 1 there as well. It does get interesting with the traffic. I'm looking at my own track map, and so there's this empty bit of real estate right now in front of these guys from turn 2 all the way up to Skyline. So that's what the GT4 drivers are about to race into now that they've worked their way through that bit of traffic. American
fastest
Muscle
lap.
looking hot as well, by the way.
Oh, yeah, it is, actually.
Right here.
Yeah, this battle between Mazomo and Stevens, as I was going to say, new fastest lap from guess who? Aiden Luthwaite. He's down to a 2:13.6 now. I mean, geez, the pace from Aiden is ridiculous. But Mazomo and Stevens will continue fighting over the American Muscle lead here. Stevens is closer than he's been before.
Yeah, so GT4 second place battle, top of screen, bottom of screen, the battle for American Muscle between Mazomo and Stevens. Fastest lap of the race between these two belongs to Stevens by a couple of tenths as well, and he was 3 tenths quicker on the last lap. You do get a pretty reasonable tow in these big boxy things, right?
Yeah, you do. The slipstream in the Mustang quite strong. Punches a big hole through the air, and oh, was that a bit of contact there? Stevens potentially shuffling Mazomo wide in Griffins and backs out of it so that the battle can keep going.
Battles plenty. It's great to see. We're really yet to have many scheduled pit stops. Lachlan Okio from this class might be one of the first just to pit. It's a thirsty old V8 in this car. I would have thought with my back of the envelope math, though, that it's the GT4s that were going to need to be the first on a pit lane because of fuel.
Yeah, I'd imagine. You know, the GT4s, they mostly have smaller engines. The Cayman has a flat 4, I believe, and it's an inline 4-cylinder for the BMW. Meanwhile, you have the now unfortunately out of the race Aston Martin with its 4.4 litre V8, I believe. So yeah, compare that to the 5.5 or 5.7 litre V8 in the Mustang. Yeah, this thing does take some steady gulps rather than sipping.
My understanding is it's the 4.6 litre Ford modular V8 in this generation of Mustang, and then later they went to the 5 and 5.4.
I see.
It's got a different name, Coyote V8, I think.
Right.
They're leaning on each other, and they're in the fence in GT4 there.
Oh yeah, I saw Matt Stewart and Miles Bond changing positions here. Bond's trying to get into second, and he's gotten it done at the cutting. It looked a little bit interesting there with Matt Stewart. Luke Swan not close enough to take advantage, but the lights are on now for Matt Stewart, evidently not too happy with Miles Bond for this incident here. Once again, thanks to Worm Paints, a replay sponsor for this event. Nice squeeze through Griffin's Bend, and they were leaning on each other. Goodness gracious. Bond obviously had the right to stay around the outside, I think, but Matt Stewart, I think, justified in thinking, that might have been a bit much.
Yeah, maybe I'm seeing it the other way there, to be honest, because it was Matt Stewart's name I said for, is that a block in turn 1? And then did he leave enough space on that occasion when Miles Bond kept knocking?
Yeah. I'm not too sure. We might have to see another angle of that incident to really see what happened. But for the time being, Stewart back to third spot. Miles Bond, though, would probably be the one with more damage. He was the one who hit the concrete barrier, but seems like not much has been done to the exterior of the BMW, at least. We'll have to wait and see for lap times. Okay, so this is the onboard here from Bond. Nice setup coming out of Hell Corner, and popping out of the slipstream, continued the run up Griffin's Bend. And if you're on the outside on the way in, you usually get a little bit of an advantage. You can brake slightly later, and Bond's able to just hook his way into the camber in the middle of the road there. And oh yeah, maybe you could argue he should have opened the steering up a little earlier there.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit, but up the hill, Stewart, he hard right defending it there. He's not going to give any chance of the inside line there to Miles Bond. Okay, fair enough. Well, now you've got to leave room on the outside if you've demanded the inside.
Yeah, that's the general rule.
As the car in front, you pick which way you're going to go, and then, well, the way that you don't go, that's where the other driver's entitled to a bit of space.
Yeah. So we'll obviously leave that up to the stewards if it ends up coming to that. But regardless, I think despite the incident, both cars still able to continue on, and we can officially say play on for this fight for second. What it has done is it's given a great advantage to Sam Muir, who's now 4.5 seconds in the lead of GT4. I don't know what Miles and Matt will be able to do to catch him back up here, as we have Pitter here, Milan Pejrac in the Cayman, and it looks like there's no rear wing on that thing.
Well, it'll be a run on the spare parts truck then. Normally Porsche spare parts trucks run out of front splitters on a race weekend, but Cayman rear wings apparently is going to be an in-demand item.
Yeah, looks like it. Well, keep an eye on Kyle Stevens as well, catching up to Joshua Van Treek, who was the car that we saw earlier taking to the runoff area down the hill. It was just a few moments ago. I thought about talking about it, but it looked like we had some bigger fish to fry at that point. But now at this point, the present, the moment we all live in, Kyle Stevens and Joshua Van Treek will start to come together here for P5 in GT4. There's also what looks like a three-way battle between Johnson, Luthwaite and Foster for 7th place. Luthwaite's made his way up into 8th as we see what happened to Peyrat. And
his headlight flasher button trying to catch his wheel there, I think.
Yeah.
He was a bit offline, had a big pendulum effect with the change of direction on the hill.
Oh, that was almost big drama for Aidan Luthwaite there. Nearly lost the rear end under brakes into the chase, and that's the worst place to lose it when you're trying to slow down.
Making some moves, so he got past Edward Foster there in the red Cayman. Now he's up to David Johnson, 7th black and green, and it's a change of line compared to where they thought the TCR was going to go.
Yeah, interesting. I don't think he expected that was Ruwalt who he was passing there. I think he expected Ruwalt to sort of leave the racing line open for him, but started to drift back over a bit on the way into the braking zone. Fortunately, they've managed to figure all of that out and continue on. This battle for the Mustangs shows no signs of slowing down either, as it looks like Scott Griffiths has had a big problem out there. He's back in the lane and he towed back to the pits. Too much curb through McPhillamy Park and heavy into the wall. The front suspension is broken there as Stevens and Mazzomo side by side for the American Muscle lead, defended from Simon Mazzomo, and Stevens cannot respond.
Yeah, in the end, only being able to try to attack around the outside. Stevens made no real progress there, but he might have another opportunity here as he shows his nose down the inside, not close enough.
Yeah, he's going to compromise his exit from Murray's there. That'll give Mazzomo a bit more breathing room. So take a couple of laps break, try to catch back up, and you can play on once more. Luthwaite, meanwhile, behind David Johnson here. The number 8 currently sitting in 7th spot, and Luthwaite wants it. It's going to be a big gap to make up to Stevens and Van Treek, but considering the pace we've seen from Luthwaite so far in this race, might be able to make short work of it. The battle for 2nd in GT4 is still on as well. Matt Stewart rounding up Miles Bond in the braking zone, but again, no change for position for the time being. But you get the feeling Bond might be in trouble here. Stewart, I think the red mist might be descending after that incident between them in turn 2. We'll see how close they got into the chase.
Stewart gave him a nudge on the way into the chase here.
Oh yeah, a little bit of a bump draft.
So that's interesting. That happened, and now getting ahead, make it tidier in the braking zone at the chase this time for Aidan Luthwaite than a few laps ago. No TCRs in front of him to make him second guess himself. So you've got to look different class here. American muscle, action everywhere with the return of Panorama Drivers Club.
I'm loving this. We've got battles happening all over the racetrack in 2 of our 4 classes here. Mazzomo trying desperately to hold on here as Daniel Stevens has really dialed up the aggression. It took a while for Stevens to get into the rhythm here, but now that the tyres are up to temp in the Mustang, they certainly have a good amount of grip under them. But I'll make a note here. We're 17 laps into the race for the American Muscle class now, and that is well past the point where the tyres are at their optimum grip. I mean, they'll remain stable as the grip falls off, but the pace really drops in these things after about 5 or 6 laps. So you have to keep an eye out for that in the battle between Mazzomo and Stevens. Here's Matt Stewart then, as he's got the number 24 ahead of him of Miles Bond. Luke Swan is still just in this battle. He's about 6/10 behind them at the moment. Is there anything that Stewart will be able to do down Cornwall?
well, bump maybe. We'll have a look. He's just 3 car lengths back at the moment, heading downhill, picking up the speed past 200 k's an hour, past 220 k's an hour. Looked like it'd be a good run. Looks like he would get a good tow. So on board with Matt Stewart, he crosses 240 k's an hour about here, and then he really starts to close in 250, 260 about there.
And a little bit more aggressive under brakes will draw up at the apex of the chase. And that will be another small opportunity to gain some more time. But no chance of getting the move done into Murray's unless he absolutely monsters it. Meanwhile, here's the TCR battle again. It looks like Dave Roberts and Carl Ruwalt have come back together here. Traffic falling into the favour of Ruwalt there, one of the GR86s making things a little more difficult. Stevens versus Mazomo. Tony Baker leading the way in the sport class, but Cameron Stubber is starting to catch up to the Pulsar Chuka Toyota machine.
Yeah, there you go. Super interesting across all of the classes, and we're not far away from, I think, a lot more pit strategy beginning to unfold, because we're almost an hour the end of the, we're not quite almost an hour into this, but we're getting towards fuel pit stops, and I think that's what Edward Foster's going to give us here. Doesn't look like any damage there. I think this is just strategy right on time.
Yeah, looks like it. Oh, I've just seen something. Bradley Seeney has a mechanical black flag. Third in the Mustangs. Something has gone very wrong for him. I'm not quite sure where that happened, but some drama happening out there on track.
Massive hit into the wall from Bond.
Yeah, that's a bit too much there for Miles Bond. I don't know if that's going to do anything to the suspension. Might give the advantage to Matt Stewart. We are not even an hour into this race, and we're already seeing some major drama develop.
He was off his regular line through the sort of metal grate section of the lap, and he just whacked the outside wall before you turn into McPhillan. He was grazed the wall again there. It had a bit of a lock-up, and how is there not more damage on that car for Miles Bond?
Evidently, the BMW M4 is built like a tank, because we've seen some big hits happen for Miles Bond, but he seems to be holding on to the pace. As we've found the incident for Bradley Seeney, thanks to Worm Paints, looks like it happened at turn 2. Went wide, too deep, and that's what he did on lap 1, but this time he clobbers the end of the tyre barrier there just before the access road, and that did a number on the front left suspension. He's still out there on track and still setting good laps as Stevens makes his way into the pits, but for Seeney, I think the drama is going to be getting into the pits in a reasonable amount of time, because I think you get 3 laps from the point you get the mechanical black flag to get into the pits and get it repaired, and if you don't, then you get disqualified. So the pressure's on Seeney to get that car repaired, and we're seeing Stevens there taking the first scheduled pit stop in the Mustangs, so maybe this is the best opportunity for Seeney to do that.
Yeah, it must be approaching that pit stop time there, and so Stevens has decided to blink earlier than Mazomo and maybe try some kind of undercut, hopefully.
Oh yeah.
For him, that Mazomo's tyres will have just been, if anything, sometimes they just get too hot.
Yeah. And this, once again, from driving the Mustang as much as I have this year, I can tell you, when the tyres overheat, it's very easy to do that, because they run basically a road tyre compound. As Edward Foster has had some trouble in the S's, lost the rear end on the way into the dipper, and bam, front end destroyed there. Such a shame for Edward Foster. He's escaped back to the pits, and
he's out lap, and he's forgotten that he's on cold tyres.
Yeah, that's what would have happened there. These guys are about to come up on Seeney, and he's going to let the second and third place cars by in GT4. Luke Swan's going to have to wait a few more corners for that, and I don't know if he'll be aware that Seeney's dealing with a mechanical black flag here. Has to go single file on the way into the elbow. But yeah, we're seeing that drama happen for cars just coming out of the pits. You've got to reset your entire driving philosophy. You would have gotten into a rhythm over the course of your stint, and with more fuel and cold tyres, the car drives completely differently. If you've forgotten about that, then that's what happens. So
another spot for Aidan Luthwaite, clawing his way up towards the race lead. He's under 30 seconds from the race leader now. It was 45 as he got a couple more GT4s heading for the pit lane. It's the race leader, Sam Muir.
Okay. Muir trying his best to control the race here as his teammate Matt Stewart will continue on, and so will Luke Swan, but Miles Bond is going to join him in the pits, probably get the opportunity to repair some of that damage that he's gotten. In comes Josh Van Treek, meanwhile. He was only a few seconds away from being caught by Luthwaite and Stevens. We'll see if they follow him in.
They've just reached 2 stops territory as well for all of these drivers, because we've been racing for 21 laps now. Predictor is about 40 to go. So you stop here, you do another 21 laps. You stop, and you're only going to have 18 or 19 to get to the end. It's looking like a 2-stop race for GT4s.
Yeah. And have a look at the gap here for TCR. James Foster over 1 minute and 11 seconds ahead, coming up to 1 minute and 12 now. That time is just continuing to creep up. He is dominating in the 2:01 here. So we'll see what he can do and what his strategy is ultimately going to be. And speaking of strategy with regards to the Mustangs, you're right, the undercut is what Daniel Stevens is going to be going for versus Simon Mazzomo. And it's going to be a big undercut because Mazzomo is staying out there for an extra couple of laps.
Yeah, so it's true for all the classes then that they've probably reached their 2-stop window. They've gone long enough into the race now that they'll make it with this stop and one more after.
Yes, Mazzomo's trying to extend that as much as possible. He'll likely have the faster car in the final stint in American Muscle. But we'll see what kind of track position Dan Stevens can get over him in at this point with an hour and 30 minutes remaining in Panorama Drivers Club number 11 here. First event since 2020. It's so good to have this series back.
Good, you'll love it.
Oh, Bradley Seeney's had a massive crash just coming out of turn 2. Oh, God, that was massive. Unfortunately, lost it by himself. He'd just come out of the pits. He was on cold tyres. He lost the rear end in the middle of the corner. And, well, now the front end is suboptimal again. No mechanical black flag for this, but still, it's another blow to our Mustang pole sitter.
Bit of the inside curb as well, and it sort of lifts up that tyre and spins it. So they were cold, presumably, and then also the rear suspension is American in the Mustang, and so sometimes, yeah, clipping a curb big time, you can spin up that wheel that's in the air, then the shock can go across from one rear wheel to the other as well.
Yeah, this is the view from, I believe, one of the GR86s. Oh no, this is on board with Sini, and yeah, just catching a bit too much of the curb. The rear end spins up, and on cold tyres, it's very hard to recover just out of the pits. Well, Sam Muir is going to fall back to the lead, but Matt Stewart and Luke Swan completing their stops here. It looks like Stewart's going to keep the position over Swan. What about Miles Bond? A 44.7 second stop for Bond. That would have been partially getting damage repaired, and he's going to come out pretty much level with Luke Swan here. He's going to have to make the move on the Porsche Cayman to get back onto the podium.
Yeah, and then you've got the remaining stoppers from that class. So there's no one in GT4 that hasn't stopped. There's no one in TCR that has stopped, except for the damage to Luke Hayden. So they're playing out some different strategy there. But Hayden Luthwaite has resumed in 6th position, 29 seconds away from the race lead. And then down in sport, no pit stops yet from Tony Baker, Cameron Stubber, or Darren Shannon. I believe there are some people that are going to be very happy that I'm saying Darren Shannon.
Yeah, indeed. Also, you see Sini's in the pits as well. He had another spin up at the top of the mountain and decided to tow back to the pit lane. So it looks like Bradley Sini's race is effectively over now. Such a shame to see. We'll see it happen here, coming across the top.
Because it has to be Sini to be believed.
Oh my God, there it is again. And yeah, lost the rear end once more. coming up to McPhillamy, and well, he had the space to get back going again, but I think he decided it was probably best to just tow back to the pits and not risk a further incident. But the time that Cameron Stubber's making up on Tony Baker is pretty fantastic, I have to say.
Oh no, why would you do that to him?
Oh my god, that's the... Oh, he's back. He's back. But in the wall, oh lord. I'm so sorry, Cameron. Oh, that's... Oh my god. He's going to stop and tow. Unfortunately, he's not too far from the pits, so it might be a shorter tow time. But, oh man, I can't believe that. Was this a hardware failure of some kind? He turns in and, oh no. Yeah, just absolutely. That's weird. Obviously, I think the rear end lost, and I think he overcorrected, but look, the car looked stable from the exterior.
Just remember that I'm David Haynes, and that one is Reese Gardner who said it. We'll have a look. He's maybe in a bit deep off his regular line, looking at that car that he was passing.
Well, may God smite me, for I put the commentator's curse on Cameron Stubber, who once again was doing a fantastic job catching up to Tony Baker, as Patrick Solom's had a problem there. That's another Porsche Cayman rear wing that's gone to the big Porsche parts bin in the sky.
He's maybe got a bit more damage on the rear than some of the others have got, because the bumper and I think the rear windshield's also gone skis on that one. We'll take a look at it with another Worm Paints replay. The Dipper has taken a couple of numbers today.
Well, it certainly has, and well, turns in, but man, the car was sliding on the way in, and the change in elevation just overcorrects, and again, it's a slow speed contact that results in the rear wing being lost as you try to recover it. Well, Luke Swan has lost third place to Miles Bond. Looks like the BMW getting back past, and judging by the speed of Swan through the Dipper, might have had an issue. Looks like a slowdown for Luke Swan. Oh, he got into the wall there at Skyline. He had to cut across the S's. Bond makes the move, but Swan having to get back up to speed after the slowdown, losing the position. Mazzono's still out there. He still hasn't pitted in the lead of the Mustangs.
Yeah, I thought normal range in the Mustang was longer than GT4s. It was more like hour 20 kind of territory. It's a decently sized tank in them. So with the all bar TCR having the same fuel tank restriction, I think that those Mustangs in American muscle can go a little bit longer than we've seen the GT4s go. But you're not going to reach one stop. Not a chance.
Yeah, well, you never know. If it is a two-stopper, it might be a long stop and a short stop, and maybe Stevens is doing the reverse strategy to what Mazzono's trying to work towards. We'll have to wait and see on that as Dave Roberts brings his Audi into the pits in TCR, and that will actually be the first pit stop that we see from TCR as further problems for Cameron Stubber. He tried to make it out of the lane, but the car was still too damaged, it looks like. So that will likely be the end of Stubber's race, and that leaves Darren Shannon with, a big lead of nearly a minute in the sport class. Tony Baker with a lead of nearly 2 minutes in the lead of the sport class. Yeah, you see Stubber comes out of the pits, but the car's still way too damaged, and he just pulls off to be safe.
Yeah, back of the paddock entrance there. So you've just got James Foster, leader of TCR, Tony Baker, Darren Shannon, Paul Saunders from Sport Class that haven't stopped, everyone else. And then Simon Mazzono currently leading American Muscle that hasn't stopped yet. You've had all the GT4s. You've had a lot of takers from some of the other classes. Not James Foster yet.
Yeah, Foster's continuing on quite a bit here, isn't he? Obviously comfortable. He knows that he's the fastest of the class, and he's been dominating the race so far, so he can afford to just continue on there. Have a look at the pit stop difference between Carl Ruwalt and Dave Roberts, meanwhile. Only 21 seconds for Ruwalt, nearly 46 seconds for Dave Roberts. Interesting stuff there. We have to think about whether or not either of them have taken tyres, because there was that big tyre update to the TCRs a couple of seasons ago in iRacing official terms. It basically means that the tyres do wear out a little more, but could be the difference between all 4 tyres and just the front 2. Usually in a TCR, as we see, problem for the number 10 of Milan Perac. Another issue across the top here, too much curb, slide, overcorrect, bam, and well, that's going to be the number 10 back in the pits once more.
Kept the rear wing on though.
Yes, that's a big plus. In any case, TCR, obviously they're front wheel drive, so the rear tyres don't work nearly as hard as the fronts do, as Mazomo finally takes his pit stop here, and that undercut for Daniel Stevens almost working out for him, just as Kyle Stevens comes up on them here in 7th place in GT4, being followed by David Johnson. Johnson's going to have to try and pick his way through here. Oh, he has to slow down and pick a line here. Oh, it's difficult, but the undercut's worked out for Daniel Stevens. He now leads American Muscle.
Well, the fight's back on. It's straight back on the menu for American Muscle between Daniel Stevens and Simon Mazomo. Mazomo might have taken a little bit more fuel though, so come around to their final stop. He could be quicker through there.
Yeah, pit stops, 28.2 seconds for Stevens, 29.8 for Mazomo. So not a huge difference in pit stop time.
Got to be careful on those cold tyres now. That's why you see him dropping from right there to a couple of car lengths back. He is going to lose a little bit of time on this lap till he's confident with those tyres to push. And we've seen many great examples for why it would be wise to let Daniel Stevens get 1 or 2 seconds away rather than try to push too hard your first or second lap on new tyres.
Exactly right, as Foster comes in finally for his first pit stop in TCR. Yeah, it is interesting the way the tyre temperature builds up in the Mustangs, because you have to drive slower on the out lap. The car is just not capable of the speeds that it'll ultimately attain at that point. So Mazomo just backing off and making sure that he's got everything in order and into a rhythm before he starts pushing. Stevens, meanwhile, in the 5 laps into his stint, coming up to 6 now, will still be in the optimum phase for tyre temperature and grip before it inevitably drops like a stone. But here's the battle once again. Last place on the podium in GT4, Luke Swan catching up to Miles Bond.
Who's only 14 seconds behind these guys.
Yeah, Aiden Luthwaite, who is running a bit more sedate pace at the moment. I think he might have had some traffic, a 2:15.0, but that was still 7/10 and 4/10 faster than Bond and Swan, respectively. They're involved with each other, trying to fight their way through here. We've still got an hour and 20 minutes to go in the race. At Luthwaite's pace, he'll surely make it into the podium spots, maybe even challenge for second.
Yeah, and when he does push, he's got incredible speed, and seeing some of those sort of like 3-lap averages where you go, oh yeah, that's 3 laps in a row. He's just kept chomping away at it. 29 seconds behind the overall lead, but only 14 seconds behind this battle that we look at. They're going to catch Luke Hayden at a tough spot over the top of the mountain here.
Yeah, this won't be the first run-in that Hayden's had with GT4s here, and he's not making it easy for them. Has to force Bond and Swan to go wide coming into the S's, but ultimately slows down and lets them continue on. I think Hayden might be still a little spooked from the incident that he suffered earlier, but regardless, he's still out there, still plugging away, and he'll likely be able to get past the GR86s, potentially before the end, depending on what kind of pace he can maintain. And for now, Luke Swan in the slipstream of Miles Bond. And I always point this out, every time we see GT4s racing, the BMW much taller than the Porsche Cayman, and both of them with a pretty narrow track, that is to say width between the tires. If there was a Mercedes racing, you would see a massive difference there. The Mercedes just looks fat and loafy compared to both of these cars, but the balance of performance in GT4 is pretty good, and all cars are capable of great results depending on the driver.
I think there was a time that the baseline of them was not quite as good as it is now. Now you can throw Porsche, BMW, Aston Martin, Mercedes at a handful of different tracks, and the real difference is in the drivers. Definitely was a time where you go, oh, high speed track, okay, BMW more power, and Porsche definitely better in sort of medium speed corners, slower, tighter stuff, and you just look at the track and you know which car was definitely going to be better. But they're more equitable now.
They are indeed. In the American muscle and sport classes, though, everyone is driving the exact same car, so it is all down to the driver and the setup. We'll see what Mazomo can do here. Oh dear, who's that's spun there? That's one of our sport cars. Was that Baker, the leader? Yes, it was Tony Baker. Oh no, what's happened to Tony Baker in the 04, dominating the class? And he's had a spin at Murray's. Doesn't look like he's carried some damage from that. He gets back going, but yeah, that was not ideal for him. We'll see how it happened here.
Not about to see a Cameron Stubber replay, are we? Turn in, too much curb.
Oh.
Spinning out after bouncing off the curb. Hey, at the start of this broadcast, who spoke about the curb at the final corner?
Yeah, I believe it was you.
Yeah, I didn't know I was blessed with the gift of prophecy, but it's for all the other challenges of this mighty racetrack. More elevation change than Circuit Spa-Francorchamps, 6.2 kilometers long. You look at the map and you go, final corner, 90-degree left-hander. Should be simple compared to Chase, the Dipper, the banking through Griffin's Bend, turn 2, the blind corners across the top. And you go, nope. Now Panorama's got one last sting in the final corner.
Yeah, and isn't it? I don't know if ironic is the right term here. I don't want to be Alanis Morissette here, but it's interesting at least that Murray's is one of the flattest corners on the entire track, and it's the one where we see the majority of incidents like that. It's just, yeah, that curb, particularly in the GR86, which does not like those big bumps, it can be an absolute death sentence. Well, these two are about to make their way down to that complex. Mazomo has dialed up the pace once again, and he ran 4/10 faster than Daniel Stevens on the last lap. He's taking full advantage of the slipstream. Stevens had the undercut and got the track position, but now Mazomo is in the prime phase of his tyres.
Little bit of sport traffic does not want to get involved in any of this. Paul Saunders, I'm guessing, sees leaders from the faster category coming, and you can hit each other, just don't hit me, and off they go. And just picked up a couple of cheeky spots from some of the dramas we've seen happen in that sport class as well. So keep it together, and you stand a chance of a good result.
Indeed you do. Now comes the run out of Hell Corner. Get on the power as smooth as you can. Mazomo getting a better line on the exit there than Stevens, as we're going to see another problem here for GT4. Already no rear wing here for, it looks like, the number 10 there. Oh no, just losing it there. Big ouchie for the 191 of Patrick Solom. My apologies. Yeah, looks like he'd already lost his rear wing earlier, and that's what happens when you don't have that stabilization on the back of the car. Meanwhile, Tony Baker, the first of our GR86s to come into the lane. It's the only class still running that hasn't had any takers to the pits yet, but Tony Baker deciding now is the time.
Interesting, because we are 3.5 minutes away from half distance.
Yeah.
Anyone who makes it there is one-stopping in the sport class, but is Baker just a little bit short of that? Will anyone else run to the halfway of this race and make it look like a two-stop race in all classes except sport.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting indeed. Well, Baker's pit stop is complete, and 36.2 seconds is the pit stop time. So we'll see if he does some fuel saving now in the final stint. He'll probably have to push a little more, considering that obviously he was so far in the lead, but then he had that spin, so he's lost a ton of time from that. And so maybe that set his strategy off course a little bit. Might be a splash and dash towards the end for Tony Baker, but we'll have to wait another hour or so before we can find that out. For the time being, Stevens and Mazomo still running line astern at the front of the field in the Mustangs. And I'm not seeing Mazomo really dial up the aggression like I was expecting. Yes, he is caught up to Stevens, but he's not pushing a move. I think probably a wise decision for Mazomo as Stevens runs deep and wide and off into the gravel at the chase. But this might be the chance Mazomo needs to make the move. Will he want to be the car in front, though? Might be a fuel-saving battle. Regardless, he's going to take the lead back at Murray's.
Yeah, the pressure may be getting to Stevens a little bit there as he ran wide and across the grass, and Mazomo goes through to the race lead. Is Ford written backwards on the underside of Mez's rear wing?
I'm not sure. I do know that the Mustang, because I painted my own livery for American Muscle Series, the bottom edge of the rear wing, I think, has a couple of weird things about it that mean, yeah, you got to sort of reposition stuff in the PSD. So I don't know if that was intentional, but it's not much use having Ford being written backwards on the rear wing. You want it written backwards on the front so people know what you're driving when they're ahead of you.
Here's Carl Stevens, David Johnson in the GT4 class. Johnson just a little bit quicker last lap. Stopped 1 lap apart from each other.
Yeah, battle of the BMWs here as they're coming up to the ever-embattled Luke Hayden in the number 16. And for the time being, looks like Johnson is the quicker of the two cars. Stevens has the faster best lap, 2:15.2 versus nearly a 2:15.6 for Johnson. But these last couple of laps, it looks like Johnson's been continuing the run here and having a good time behind our league administrator. Meanwhile, saw that we had Paul Saunders make his way into the pits in the GR86 class, and it actually looks like it's a longer pit stop than he wanted. He's been stopped now for 1 minute and 20 seconds as Darren Shannon also comes in, and that will be our field cleansed. Every car that started the race will have made at least one visit to the pits.
Yeah, it could be like speeding on entry and unsafe pit entry there for Paul Saunders. Meanwhile, yeah, Darren Shannon comes in at the same time, and I'd say that's basically bang on the halfway point. You definitely aim to not have to stop from now to the end. You'd be brimming that tank in sport class, I imagine.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You'd be filling it up as much as you possibly can. And, well, they've pitted pretty much bang on half race time. So considering they've been able to make it that far, they'll definitely be able to make it to the end. There's still question marks over Tony Baker, though. He missed the halfway point by a few minutes.
I reckon don't say that when you're not in the outright class, because it can happen that the clock expires and you are just ahead of your class leader. And so the outright leader, the checkered flag waves for the outright leader like a minute after the clock expires, and then you still have to do another 2.5 minute lap after that. It can happen when you're one of the slower class cars in a race like this, at a track like this, that you actually do 2 hours 24 minutes of racing in a 2 hour 20-minute race.
Yeah, good point you raised there. I always forget about that. It's
the theoretical maximum would be the lap times of the fastest class minus about 1 second, minus about you being 1 second in front of that, plus the length of your own lap. So based on how late could the outright leader conceivably finish the race, And then what's a whole lap for you after that?
Yeah, it's something that I almost never think about. I think it's been a minute since I've actually done a race as the lower class car in a multi-class endurance race. I do like my prototypes, but whatever the case may be, we will still have to wait for an hour and 8 minutes to find out if the GR86s, the Mustangs and the TCRs have considered that. Back up to GT4, David Johnson still trying to chase down Kyle Stevens here, and he was only a 10th faster than Stevens on the previous lap, so the pace might be reaching a bit of a plateau at the moment here in the battle for 7th.
Say what you will about the gearbox in this BMW GT4, but you always know what gear you're in. It's third or it's fourth or it's fifth of this 6-speed gearbox, same ratios as the road car. Not all GT4 cars have their road-going counterparts gearbox, and the same was also true of TCR, and we have on iRacing the version of the Audi RS3 that does have the road-going gearbox, when it turned out from experience that actually the more expensive racing sequential didn't shift gears quite as fast as the road car DSG, but it was far, far more robust in actual racing conditions, and instead of needing to change every 5,000 kilometers, you could actually race with it.
Yeah, exactly. It's an interesting conversation to have, and it's one that I always like to bring up when we're racing GT4s and TCRs. The BMW and the Aston Martin, I believe, have the road-going gear ratios, but the Cayman, Porsche Cayman, and the Mercedes have a race spec gearbox with race gear ratios.
The McLaren's got 7, doesn't it? And so it's road car.
Oh yeah, true.
Car.
Yeah,
it was an option, I believe, for this, but I don't think anyone went for that McLaren.
Yes, indeed. I've been thinking, all broadcast, there's a 5th GT4. What is it? Oh, it's the McLaren, of course.
Yeah, and then of course the American Muscle has road car style gearbox. It's a H pattern, 6-speed. The ratios in the final drive are similar, but interestingly, the GR86 doesn't. They went quite a long way from the road car to try to, in the American motorsport landscape, place that GR86 somewhere higher above the MX-5 Cup in terms of performance, while still being below sort of TCR and GT4 and all that. And to that end, a lot of custom exhaust, engine management, gearbox, suspension, aerodynamics, and also much wider slick tyres than the road car go on our sport class GR86. So the American one's quite a bit quicker than what you see of Australian Toyota 86 racing.
Indeed, and for all of that work, when it comes to them racing together in the production car challenge, the GR86s and MX-5s are incredibly close on pace. So interesting to see how all of that works out. Stevens gets into the wall there coming up through Reed Park, and he is going to lose the spot to David Johnson, and probably more besides, considering how hard that hit was.
But I think we learned from Miles Bond, so long as your hip check into the wall is square on, you can kind of get away with it, but it just depends how square it was. It seems mainly okay. It's the kind of thing that would startle you. There's no meatball for him, and he seems to be keeping up. So long as it's a square hit in this BMW, you seem to be okay.
Yeah. Oh God, that was a real heart attack moment. Nonetheless, we'll see it here once again. Just that wall always jutting out, always giving you trouble, and it looks like it was a pretty square hit. So you never know. Kyle Stevens might have gotten away with that. He'll continue on for at least a few laps to see if the pace is the same, and if he can drive around the issue, then he certainly will continue on. But we'll turn our attention back to TCR for the time being. The Audi, which, as you mentioned, David, has that road-going DSG gearbox, faster shift times. It's much better on acceleration off a standing start than the other TCR cars are, but they pay for that with a lower ultimate top speed. It was notorious, this car, whenever TCR raced at Daytona on iRacing, drivers would be like, it kind of just red lines down the straight, to say nothing of racing at the Nürburgring.
Yeah, a big toe on some really long straights, and you can hit the limiter in sixth in this Audi TCR quite easily. And it's easy to know from the onboard if the driver's doing it, because the whole dash is red in your face.
Yeah, indeed it is. Bit of traffic drama further back there. It looked like it was Henry King having to make way there, as Dave Roberts will continue to chase down Carl Ruwalt here. These two have been in and amongst each other's business pretty much the whole race, and you see the rev lights there, and have a look at that. That's an aggressive entry from the GT4 BMW there. I'm not sure which one that is. That's Luthwaite, Aidan Luthwaite, who's still trying to chase down Miles Bond and Luke Swan for fourth spot. He's actually made it to within 7 seconds of them. So I think we're going to be seeing a three-way battle for third in GT4 in the next few laps if Luthwaite can keep that pace up. 2:14.1 for Luthwaite on the last lap. Miles Bond, meanwhile, did a 2:16.
Indeed, this last hour could get pretty good. I'm looking at how long GT4 drivers ran in the first stint, and the longest was David Johnson and Luke Swan, who did 22 laps. We're currently predicted at 26 to go, so it's like 4 laps until we kind of open up the pit window for the final stop for GT4s. We could already be in the window for a final stop for touring car, and not for American muscle yet, I don't think.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to wait a bit for the next pit stops for those other classes, but Ruwalt is under pressure now. Dave Roberts in the slipstream down Mountain Straight. He's not close enough for a move into Griffins. He's going to lift off a little earlier, maybe save a few milliliters of fuel and continue on as is. It's very difficult to pass in TCRs. They obviously have anti-lock brakes, so you can really push them coming into the braking zones. And side-by-side racing is very easy to do in these cars, but actually committing to a move, I've found in my experience, is quite difficult. But I'm nowhere near a fast TCR driver.
I think they had ABS.
They do.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, in fact, all cars in the field have ABS. The GT4s, obviously, they have traction control as well. It's the same for the GR86s. They've got ABS and traction control. But the Mustang and TCR, meanwhile, they have ABS but no traction control.
A little wide, so it's nose up the inside from Dave Roberts on Carl Ruwalt, and now it is a DSG gearbox drag race down Conrod Straight and towards the chase.
Yeah, move completed for Dave Roberts. Is there any opportunity for Ruwalt to come back? This is where the slipstream really kicks in, and you see him edging ever closer and closer to the back of his fellow Audi, but he's going to lift off at the end of the straight and just save a bit of fuel. Maybe make the move again later. Meanwhile, good news if you're a Hugh McLaughlin fan. After disconnecting from the server earlier and having multiple issues in the pits, looks like he's made his way back out.
So it's 5 trips through the pit lane for Hugh McLaughlin compared to 1 for the leaders in his class, but he's back.
Yeah, 1 trip through the pits for actually literally every other car still running as well. Once again, though, Aidan Luthwaite catching up to Luke Swan and Miles Bond. A second gained on the last lap, and looks like Luthwaite's just about to make his way past the battle for the American Muscle lead up behind Mazomo, and he's going to have to back off a little bit here through Reed Park. Might be able to get him here coming up to Silman and McPhillamy. Nice line for the both of them, and they will secure their relative positions once again. But now Luthwaite has a bit more clear air ahead of him. In fact, there are no cars in between himself and Luke Swan right now.
Yeah, so definitely lost a little bit of time underneath the tree heading up the hill there. But like you say, now it opens up for him and the traffic gives and the traffic takes. And you got a lot of race to eventually catch it all up. This is on board with one of the Porsche Caymans. See all the gears that Luke Swan gets to use, and then shifting up into sixth at about 225, 230 there. Now you really get to pull in the slipstream if you're close enough. 250 is a good speed.
It is indeed. Touching 255 on the way into the chase and maybe catching a little bit of the grass as well, but doesn't harm him all that much. Meanwhile, Daniel Stevens getting back past Simon Mizomo down the straight. I think Mez might have had some trouble at the elbow.
So these two have changed places a couple of times. Tony Baker is in a second stop at the front of Toyota GR86 in the sport class now. And we're talking about that. It looked like some of the other drivers went long enough that they can one-stop this. But that's the second time in the lane for Baker. And here is where Mizomo just all out of sorts down the mountain. You're wide and fast in one corner, and it just keeps going before you get to the elbow and you can actually reset. It was sort of coming across the mountain just a little out of shape, and it kept going all the way to the exit of the dipper.
The other thing you have to consider in the Mustangs is it has an old school H-pattern gearbox, and you have to use the clutch on upshifts and downshifts, so it's very easy to miss a gear under acceleration. You can just get stuck in neutral if you don't time it right, so maybe that's what happened to Mizomo as well. Well, Tony Baker has just completed his second pit stop after only another 36 seconds there. He still comes out in the lead by a long way over Darren Shannon, and also Carl Ruwalt in the pits in TCR, taking an early second stop there after only 12 laps being completed there. So, looks like, all things considered, the TCRs would have had 2 long stints, 1 short stint. Ruwalt deciding to get that short stint out of the way in the middle.
Still just outside of final stop range of GT4s, but like we said, into the final stop range of sport class, TCR, then American Muscle, then GT4, and that's all going to happen in the next sort of 5 to 10 minutes. It's sort of definitely with 45 minutes to go, GT4 in their final stop window.
Well, can Simon Mizomo make his way back past Daniel Stevens here? These two have been neck and neck for the lead in American Muscle, and Stevens will be looking intently at his mirrors there. You can see on his right monitor Mizomo just peeking his nose out. That the run down into the chase will favour Stevens for the time being. Mizomo is now past the prime phase of his tyres. In fact, both of them will be struggling for grip and for pace now, but they're basically the only 2 cars in close competition in that class. Henry King a long way back from the both of them and not running the same pace.
Yeah, and then the other car still running in that category is Lachlan Keogh.
And Keogh is running roughly the same pace as King. Quite a ways back, so we'll have to rely on maybe a strategy or a mistake or a safety car to try and catch back up. Meanwhile, Aiden Luthwaite did lose some time to Luke Swan on the previous lap, but he's gained it all back and then some, and the gap now sits at 4.4 seconds for 4th place in GT4. 2:13.693 for Aiden Luthwaite on the last lap. It's only 300ths of a second off his ultimate fastest lap, so Luthwaite continuing to jet his way up the field.
Yeah, it's basically a repeat of the fastest lap of the race for him just then, and it's using all of the road, and it's precise and it's fast, but it's smooth at the moment from what we see of him, just using the bits of the road that he wants to, but not overexerting himself too much, closing in on podium position, and then who knows what.
Yeah, exactly. It'll be a very interesting battle to behold, as is this one. Continuing on between Stevens and Mizomo. There was a big difference in laps between Stevens and Mizomo for the first stint. Stevens went 18 laps on his initial stint. Mazomo went a full 23 laps. That's 6 laps, I believe. 6 laps extra that Mazomo had done. So we'll see if that comes back to him here in the final stages of the race. Much straighter exit for Mazomo than Stevens, though. Dan did take a little bit more out of the car on the exit, so they're roughly equal. They've got to keep an eye out for the Audi here of Dave Roberts as he catches up to them. See the speed for the TCRs. It's ultimately quite close to the Mustang's eventual top speed, though the Mustang does take a bit longer to get there.
Yeah. Oh
dear. Keeps it out of the barrier, fortunately, does Dave Roberts, but that's going to give Carl Ruwalt a little bit of a pep in his step, I think. Remember, Ruwalt's just completed his second stop, and so that's another thing that he won't have to do. So what happened to Roberts here? Just touching the rev limiter there in sixth, and on the way into the corner, just loses the rear end. He was all the way on the lock stops there, but well recovered. These front-wheel drive cars, you get in a slide, what you got to do is steer into the slide and mash the throttle.
Been there, done that. Saved myself however much Sebring Raceway charge you for messing up tyre barriers. Can be a lot. They charge you like $100 per bag of oil dry if you drop some oil.
Yeah, jeez.
But to the point of that, the TCR, yeah, okay, a little quicker in a straight line, accelerating a little better initially with the turbocharged engine, but compared to the big heavy Mustangs, you really shouldn't need to worry too bad about outbraking the Mustangs. You should be better in that area. And the GT4 has got to be the one to try to line up on your battle between the leading Mustangs in American muscle. While Stevens, I think, 8th place in his class. And then, of course, the returning TCR of Dave Roberts is also going to be on the back of them. Don't get past them at the top of the hill. Long wait to the elbow, where you're not really going to be able to make a move anywhere in between. Stevens trapped in there behind Daniel Stevens and Simon Mazomo on board with the Mez. Goes the GT4. Opening it up in the wide expanses of the long straight of Conrod Straight. And for a repeat of last lap comes Dave Roberts past the Mustangs in the braking zone into the chase.
He does indeed. What a lovely little battle we are seeing up ahead of these guys. Look at the amount of curb there that Mazomo was using. That's insane. The Mustang doesn't mind jumping over those curbs. Actually drives a lot like the Australian touring cars that we see in iRacing. They can definitely take those big curbs with some gusto, but again, you have to be careful. This thing is pretty close to the Mustang FR 500S road car, so got to be gentle sometimes, but you can certainly be aggressive. And Mazomo is nice and aggressive on the throttle. There's some fog now descending over the circuit. This is very interesting indeed. It's gone down to 21 degrees Celsius, and the humidity, man, the relative humidity is massive.
Bit of a breeze too. I don't think you can have fog without a little bit of relative humidity, and it's when the cold air temperature means it can't hold much water, and there's that breeze. I mean, 4 k's an hour.
No, certainly.
From the northeast.
So that would result in
headwind
a slight
on Conrod Straight, tailwind on Mountain Straight.
Yeah. Took the words right out of my mouth. Got them out a bit faster as well.
I'm not going to put them back.
Yeah. I don't need them. They've already been said. Well, Luthwaite, he's almost... there you go, see? They just popped up over the hill just then. Luke Swan is going to be looking in his mirrors occasionally and thinking, how close is Aiden getting here at the moment? So 2:14.3 from Luke Swan there, some good pace. And Aiden Luthwaite actually running a little bit slower. Might have had a bit of traffic, but we'll see how these condition changes affect him. Looking up at the top of the mountain, the sun is out again and doesn't look like as much fog. You can see that the fog is just rolling through at the moment.
If you're at the top of Mount Panorama and you're looking down at the city, you realise how tall it is up there. There's potential that you've got sort of fog over the town, fog over the pit straight, but not at the top of the mountain, sort of climb up out of it. So we might be seeing just a little bit of that based on where the cloud level is, where the fog is at. Battles, top of your screen, bottom of your screen, lead of American Muscle, top of your screen for the podium in GT4, the most populous category for the return of Panorama Drivers Club this year. It's the bottom of the screen, battle for podium.
Yeah, Miles Bond still holding on over Luke Swan, but both of them will be aware that Aiden Luthwaite is steadily marching his way up to them. They do have a lapped car in between them, though, and that is Hugh McLaughlin, who's running down in 21st overall at the moment, 12 laps down on the lead of the race. So Luthwaite will have to make his way past him first. Looks like he might make short work of it as McLaughlin's just pulled over out of the dipper to let him go. So Luthwaite can get back on the loud pedal once more in his pursuit of a third place after starting so far down the field. So far down, in fact, that he was actually caught back with the staggered start for the sport class. It's amazing the amount of time he's had to make up.
Yeah, it was more than 45 seconds off of that race start. Here's a look from the Porsche. Oh, they lean on each other.
Oh, not the first time that we've seen Miles Bond leaning on the other car there. Well, Luke Swan finds his way through. Beautiful pass.
Yeah, very, very nicely done indeed. So up into third goes Luke Swan, and he maybe just wants to leave Miles Bond to be the one to throw defence at Aiden Luthwaite, who is so close now because he's gained a bit of time on them that lap. That would have been the fastest lap of the race for Aiden Luthwaite, but it hasn't counted because he's hopped the curb somewhere.
Yeah, either that or he's clipped a wall, and I think he might have when he was making his way past McLaughlin. That would have gotten a 0x and invalidated the lap. So yeah, he is ridiculously flying at the moment, a full second faster than Luke Swan on that previous lap, and Miles Bond 1.8 seconds the difference in lap time. They're about to come up on Henry King, and this is the worst place to come up on traffic. Right at the start of the mountain section, you see Luke Swan saying, hey, we're here, you gotta let us go, we've got a battle to negotiate here. King, meanwhile, just minding his own business out there. He's running a solid third in American Muscle. He doesn't need to worry about any pressure from behind from Okiho. But Stevens and Mazzomo are now nearly a full minute of King, and the lead is going to change in American Muscle again. Oh, but it changes right back, and then it changes right back again. Simon Mazzomo gets the power down out of the chase, and he's back in the lead. Stevens is going to respond by going for his second stop.
45 minutes left in the race and a calculated 20 to go for the GT4s, maybe 19 or 18 for those American muscle cars. Absolutely in the pit stop window to make your final stop. Whole heap of smoke that Luthwaite drives through in this rapidly simmering and boiling over podium battle in GT4. They're also in the window to be able to stop and make to the end. But Swan and Bond probably would like to keep a bit of track position over each other here for the moment. Maybe it's Luthwaite that could stop early and try to undercut them.
Yeah, potentially. How'd the smoke happen? Oh, wow, that was like Aiden Luthwaite catching the wall and evidently the sim going, whoa. Not too sure about that, but regardless, it doesn't seem to have gotten any damage from that, but looks like Luthwaite is going to follow Bond into the pits here. The undercut is on for the two BMWs as they chase the Porsche.
Well, Luke Swan ran long in the first stint, so he's going to do it in the middle stint again, at least compared to Miles Bond and Aiden Luthwaite, as these two BMWs come in to top off their tank to get them to the end of the race towards the checkered flag. We don't know exactly at this point how much you're going to need. Pit entry was clean and no black flags for either of them. iRacing pit lane speed here is 50 k's an hour.
Yep, 50 in built-up areas, remember that. So Daniel Stevens is going to be the one once again to take the earlier pit stop of this Mustang lead battle. He'll be out there on cold tires once again, and on a track that is steadily getting cooler. It's going to be even more of a nightmare straight out of the pits, so he needs to be careful, especially across the top. Tony Baker, meanwhile, still in the lead of our sport class. No pressure from Darren Shannon behind, and we're expecting once again for Shannon and Saunders to only make this one pit stop in this race. They pitted right around the half-time mark, but you never know, like we discussed. Could be potential for the sport class to have to go an extra lap, as Miles Bond has now lost the position to Aidan Luthwaite in the pits, and it was only a small difference in pit stop time. It was only half a second faster for Aidan Luthwaite in the box, but he was a full 2 seconds faster through the lane.
He's maximised sort of attacking his pit stall and getting up to the pit lane speed from his pit stall as well. Now, the first gear in this BMW is not particularly tall, but there are some cars with a very tall first gear where to get from 0 up to 50, you don't want it to bog down with the automatic clutch. You want to be able to rev it and drop the clutch in a way that gets you up to speed quickly. So maybe Luthwaite's just done all the little stuff better.
Yeah, potential for that. He's done the big stuff better as well with the pace he's maintained. So Sam Muir will take his final pit stop, and Matt Stewart will continue on. It's still the 1-2 for Muir and Stewart at the front of the field. Luke Swan is going to stay out another lap here. He's deciding to do something a little bit different. Daniel Stevens approaching Murray's Corner as Mazomo's final pit stop is now complete, and wow, Mazomo's going to come out with a massive advantage. Only 18 seconds stop there for Mazomo versus nearly 26 seconds for Stevens. That's interesting. I don't know if Mazomo's changed both of his tyres there. Sorry, all 4 of his tyres. He's probably changed either only the fronts or only the rears, or maybe only the right side tyres. But yeah, that I think is the big difference maker.
Yeah, they were both very similar in their first stops, but you were thinking Mez ran a bit longer. Did he save a bit more fuel? Is he in a place to have a shorter final stop? And yeah, well, he sure has, by quite a bit. Has he sacrificed anything to make it happen?
Yeah, well, like we say, I think it's the tyres, because in my league racing in the Mustang, you should probably change at least 2 of your tyres, but it takes around about 20 seconds or so to change 2 tyres. Takes closer to 30 seconds to change all 4. So I think that's what the difference is between Mazomo and Stevens. Mazomo probably going only for right sides. Daniel Stevens changing all 4 of his tyres, so he will be likely a bit quicker in the final stint, but he's got a lot of time to make up.
I think Mazomo's changed none. The car didn't go up or left, right on any jacks at all during this.
Oh, okay. Wow, so that's interesting there from Mazomo. And it also means that Stevens is going to have a massive pace advantage for about 5 or 6 laps. Is it going to be enough to make up the gap?
Now I'll try to do the same CSI on Stevens' pit stop. So taking a look at this, finds his lane, goes in, and then immediately nothing happens. And then the right-hand side, so okay.
Yeah, so he's done both sides of the car. Stevens has changed all 4 tyres. Takes a few seconds for it to happen, of course. This is not a high-level racing car, so it's very basic technology being used to change the tyres.
And then you've got some of the last of your GT4 pit stops happening as well. So Matt Stewart and Luke Swan are in. Sam Muir will go back into the lead of the race. Will Aidan Luthwaite end up relative to Luke Swan? And this is Mazomo's pit stop. There is no jacking up either side of the car, which means it was fuel only from Mazomo. It helped him have a really quick stop. And this run through the pit lane, it helps cool those tyres off, which can be very important. But we're already dealing with a much colder track temperature at 20 Celsius. So I can see the logic for Mazomo, but you also now expect Stevens to just have a little more to try to close him down in this final phase.
Well, here comes Aidan Luthwaite. David Johnson in the middle of taking his run through the lane at the moment. Luthwaite will still be behind Luke Swan. Luke had a pit stop, nearly 8 seconds faster than Aidan Luthwaite. So that's quite interesting there. Much quicker run through the lane. Is it going to be enough to get Luke to the end? I would imagine so.
Got to remember those cold tyres. Look at how wide he went through turn 2 there. Just got to be so careful, especially once you get to the top of the mountain, once you get to the dipper. That's where we've seen the cold tyres catch some out.
Yeah, and particularly the bump there that he just negotiated on the way up to Reed Park. You've got to be very careful across the top on those cold tyres. But I suppose now it's all down to Aidan Luthwaite to see if he can make that gap up. Matt Stewart and Sam Muir a long way ahead of these guys. Swan looks like 6 seconds or so that he has to make up to get back up to Matt Stewart, but I don't know if he'll be able to do that, honestly. He's going to be more concerned with Luthwaite coming up behind. Meanwhile, James Foster, he's coming up to the end of his second stint in the TCR. And we've gotten some information there from Jay Kennedy. You see that gap there on screen there, 33 seconds. That is actually how far away James Foster is from lapping Dave Roberts. So that just goes to show how dominant the 201 has been in the TCR class.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen great back and forth between Dave Roberts in second, Carl Ruwaltz in third. We've seen both of them, maybe run off the track a little bit, but none of them have had anything for James Foster. And he's just built a lead, kept building a lead, kept building a lead. And it's a massive advantage that he's ended up with at this stage of the race, having made one of 2 stops that he needs to get to the end. Baker leading Sport has made 2 from Darren Shannon and Paul Saunders, who we think can make it on 1.
And in comes, I believe that's Patrick Solom in the GT4. That'll be the end of his second stint, minus the rear wing once again. I don't know if the rear wing has stayed off since his last crash or if he's lost it again, but regardless, it wouldn't have been too fun to drive through the chase. And oh dear, I've just seen another crash for Hugh McLaughlin, but on the exit of turn 2, having just emerged back out from the pits, he's done a nice 360. Donna Rosberg, as it were, KK Rosberg, and managed to continue on.
Cayman's looked like a challenging car at points, so we go to the replay on McLaughlin turn 2.
Just losing the rear, taps the wall, and then up, facing the right way, keep going.
In that situation, if you say you didn't see anything, then no one saw anything and you're all good and it didn't happen.
Yeah, exactly. I think the front bumper of the car might have something to say about that, though. Well, Luke Swan still holding on to third, but you can see that Aidan Luthwaite's pace is just drawing that gap down, and it's extending a little in the braking zone, but that goes to show for me that Swan is pushing a little bit harder under the brakes. He's trying to brake later, but then that compromises his exits a little bit. He does gain a bit on Luthwaite in the final sector of the track, but I think especially across the top, everywhere from turn 2 to Forest Elbow, that's where Luthwaite is really making up the time. Well, you see right there, the most gain that Aidan Luthwaite has made is indeed in Sector 2, which is across the top of the mountain. More or less level in the other 2 sectors, though.
Yeah, on the most recent one. The end of sector 1 is on the way into the cutting or on the way out of the cutting?
On the way out. Oh, wide for Swan out of the cutting, and the sector 1 line is right about here. Yeah, so...
And then the sector 2 line's at the exit of the elbow, isn't it?
Correct.
So this is in the middle sector now, so mainly it's over the top of the hill and then down to the elbow.
Yeah, and confidence and precision is certainly the way to go through this section, and I think it's this sector of Mount Panorama that really separates the good drivers from the great, because if you're able to nail those lines and keep it out of the wall but still maintain a blistering pace, just goes to show sheer preparation, as Sam Muir has lost 2 seconds in his run through the lead because of what we're about to see, I'd gather, catching up to Carl Ruwalt here in the number 7, and gets on the brakes nice and early here. Doesn't want to be rounding up on the back of the Audi through this section of the circuit, and well, I think he's got the time to play with. He doesn't have to go for those big moves up the inside. He can keep that margin going and just manage it. But you can see that Ruwalt is mega sideways in that Audi at the moment. Remember, he had a quicker pit stop than Dave Roberts, and we presume that's because he hasn't taken rear tyres. So I think the rear of that Audi is sliding around a lot more now.
Yeah, could have been that fronts only, and it's moved his balance a bit by this stage of the race. You still get good traction out of the corners, which is very, very important for the lap times, and we've seen a few examples of how you can control and guide and direct the car with just the throttle and the front steering tyres. Looked a little challenging, and I think what you saw Sam Muir do was really, really clever.
Yeah.
When you're behind a car that you can't pass in that section, there's actually no advantage to being right on their rear bumper. Give yourself that little bit of space behind them till you get to the part where you know you can pass them. Then you give yourself the opportunity to have a runner at them approaching where you know you can pass them.
Yeah, it's something that I see a lot of drivers do in so many events when they're lapping cars, especially around here. And I just think to myself, why are you riding the back of them? You're just going to cost yourself time when it comes time to make the move. You might as well back off and then allow yourself a cleaner run so that when you're actually passing them, you are not giving up as much time as you otherwise would. Look at the difference, meanwhile, that's made there for Sam Muir. 2.5 seconds lost to Matt Stewart. But, again, like you say, David, it's clever. He was able to maintain pace, more or less, and he's still in the lead by 8.5 seconds, so he didn't need to push.
Yeah, same thing happens on the roads far too often, but that's a soapbox neither of us really need to get on top of.
We're going to get on it anyway.
Beating a dead horse on that one. You can legally run red lights if you own a Ford Ranger.
Really? You might have to pick one up.
I think that's what I've learned observational.
Jay asking, is that the same as not needing to use the indicators if you own a BMW? I think so. Or having to have a box of tissues on the back shelf if you own a Volvo. I don't believe I've heard that one.
I thought that was Camrys, but only if you'd already put a dent in the rear bumper.
Yeah. I wonder if there's any special rules for MX-5 drivers on the road. Jay saying you have to be a hairdresser to own an MX-5.
I think that was true in the 90s, 2000s. Now you can be like a junior programmer or production assistant, or there's a whole handful of other roles that you can have and still own an MX-5. So it's not hanging around getting through some of the traffic and may have just put a bit of a scare on Lachlan Akuyo there.
Yeah, potentially.
Can't speak Darren Shannon though, he knows what's coming there. The cutting. Luthwaite continues to gain time on Luke Swan.
Indeed he does. Darren Shannon, he's got a fair amount to make up to Tony Baker. I don't think he's going to have much of a chance unless Baker has an issue, but still running solidly in second in sport as Luthwaite continues to chase down Luke Swan across the top of the mountain. He's in his sights and he's keeping the control nicely over the curbs.
A lot of traffic for Swan here as he comes down the mountain. He's now behind the TCR and not quite finding the way through. We know it costs you 2 seconds to be behind a TCR coming down the mountain here. And look at how those 2 seconds have gone. Luthwaite is here.
Oh, finally, Luthwaite catches up.
Over.
Oh, God. I always have to reset my brain whenever I hear something like that. Well, the Luthwaite is indeed over, as you say. It doesn't have quite the same ring when I say it, but a little bit of slipstream down Conrod, and they are both past the Audi of Carl Ruolt now. And hard on the brakes, into the back of Swan goes Aidan Luthwaite. Oh, okay. I know it's the first time in a while that Luthwaite's had to actually battle another GT4 directly, but geez, that was almost disaster.
Luckily, the BMW's not so big that a tap like that takes the rear wing off. But no, they definitely made contact in the braking zone there. Great run here from Luthwaite in the braking zone. He's so deep on the brakes. I don't think he even meant it. He was just coming in hot and he's like, oh, you're braking there, are you? Oh, okay. This is one of the places I've been gaining all of the time. Every lap is I'm damn good on the brakes. And so this is a defense of the inside from Swan up to Griffin's Bend turn 2. We've seen few people just manage to sneak around the outside here. I don't think Luthwaite's quite close enough for that. He's got enough advantage in some other places, and Swan is under pressure and I think feeling it at the moment.
Yeah, Luthwaite's going to be riding the back of him here, maybe tapping Morse code on the bumper on the way up the cutting. You can already see that Luthwaite's gained a bit of damage to the front bumper thanks to that tap that he gave Swan at the chase. But it's going to be single file running across the top of the mountain. Question is, can he put pressure on Swan and force a mistake? Otherwise, the only place he'll be able to get by is the chase.
Look at how the weather has changed from the start of this race 2 hours ago to now. It was beautiful afternoon sun. The track temperature was sort of 26, 29 Celsius, whatever it was. Now it's down at 20. It's overcast, it's foggy, it's getting dark at the end. The racing is getting a little hotter, even if the track isn't. Still quite gusty.
Yeah, it's looking a bit like 1860s London out there. Pea soup fog. But now the slipstream is on for Aidan Luthwaite, and this is his chance to get on the podium. Luke Swan parks the car right in the middle of the circuit, has to force Luthwaite to pick a side. Will he go defensive into the chase is the question. It looks like he will. He's going to stay middle of the road and force Luthwaite to slide up the inside there. Can he pull it up? Swan's going to try and get him on the exit, but too much curb for Swan. The car is unsettled, and Luthwaite's going to maintain the spot. Now, is Swan going to have a dive back at Murray's? Probably a bit too early to do that. You'd have to wait until the last lap or so. I think what Swan's going to have to do now is turn his attention to staying in Luthwaite's slipstream, because that's going to be his only chance to try and catch up to Matt Stewart.
So he started at the very, very tail of the field, behind all of the Sport Class cars in the staggered start, almost 45 seconds behind the race lead, behind everyone else in class. Aidan Luthwaite makes his way to the podium positions with 25 minutes to go. There's your positions gained, and it's Aidan Luthwaite. If you count other class cars, he's plus 19, but he's plus 9 within his own class.
Ooh, Swan's coming back at him. Contact. Oh dear. They both run deep. Swan gets into the wall a little bit. It's starting to get nasty here between Luke Swan and Aidan Luthwaite.
Oh dear, so they had a little bit of contact earlier in the chase, and then they have a little bit on the way into Griffin's Bend.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to see that one again, because, I'm not sure exactly how it all went down. So Swan pulled out of the draft, but Luthwaite was moving over a little bit. Yeah, that's interesting. Swan does just brush up against the tyre barriers, but doesn't result in any major damage to the car from what I can see. But, I don't know what Aidan Luthwaite's view of all of that was. He definitely did move a little bit just before they got on the brakes. Oh, no, Swan! Oh, Jesus. Mary and Joseph. He's
But
kept his rear wing. Oh, no.
Massive hit in the wall, though, at
Yeah.
the bottom of the S's for Luke Swan.
Oh, very, very much so. And that's going to be losing the rear end. And then, yeah, well.
You know what? I don't think the hit was actually that big, but there sure was a lot of smoke because he was going fast. He slid sideways for a long way before making a square rear hit in the wall. But still, it's the kind of thing that really, really scares you at that part of the lap. I think we've all seen people crash there and go over the fence.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Well, he was already sliding, coming through the left-hander, and just lost the rear. And, yeah, the actual contact there wasn't that much. It was, if anything, just a light tap, but the speed he was going at was so massive as our TCR top two completing their final pit stops. Dave Roberts already completing his, and James Foster back out of the pits now. And, well, he is almost a full lap in the lead of the TCR category. Lachlan Akio, meanwhile, in the Mustangs. He's back in line with his classmates, but he's quite a way down. Looks to me like 5 laps down on the next car in class, being Henry King, and he's just had a problem at the dipper. He had some damage, and that's how he got it, just brushing the wall on the exit, and then a further big hit into the barrier just in time for a couple other cars to come up on him. So he's going to have to come back into the pits to get that car buffed out.
22 minutes to go. I'm going to look up and down. Who hasn't made their final stop? James Foster leading TCR.
He just took his second stop half a lap ago.
Oh, okay, sorry, but he didn't change tires, so it hasn't triggered.
No, he didn't.
That he, or perhaps he only took fronts or something, and therefore it hasn't triggered as a tyre change. I was reading the tyre stints, to be honest. That's where it's got me, is that he did stop, but he didn't take the tyre change we expect, which is 20 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, well, yeah, I remember from my racing in TCR as Henry King takes his final stop in the Mustangs. It's going to be a 3-stopper for Henry. The TCRs, when you change the front tires, they can take anywhere from 17 to 22 seconds. It depends on RNG up to a point. Unclear whether James Foster will have taken tires on that final stop. So now Luke Swan, with the drama that he suffered there after Aidan Luthwaite got past him, now having to keep an eye out for Miles Bond, who's starting to come back here in the final stint.
Yeah, it's interesting. So we've had Aidan Luthwaite, Luke Swan beef. Is it time to return to a bit of Luke Swan, Miles Bond drama?
I think Luke Swan's having beef with his own rear tyres at this point.
Definitely didn't look like he had as much grip in them as he wanted, slid them and then into the wall higher up, and then this is what the onboard looks like for him there. Yeah, it takes quite a fair chunk of correction. He's got a car that's becoming quite tail happy, mid-engine car, and becomes a bit of a pendulum sometimes.
Indeed it does. The Cayman, notorious, at least when it was first released, for being quite a difficult car to keep the rear end stable on, and the BMW M4, when it first came out, was known as a bit of a boat, understeering, ploughing its way through the corners. Of course, both cars, as well as the rest of the GT4 class, have been steadily updated to ease out some of those issues with car behavior. It'll be interesting to see how the new BMW M4 compares to this one when it comes out, because iRacing has been quite clear on the market improvements to the car with the new spec. Apparently more front downforce, I think 50% more front downforce or something like that is one of the numbers I saw quoted. As Bond is going to use all of the front grip that car has available to continue jetting up to the back of Luke Swan here. A little bit of a tap of the wall there for Luke, and he's a bit wide in the elbow as well. So here comes Miles Bond. Swan, unfortunately, having all sorts of issues keeping that car going straight, as Aidan Luthwaite has just tipped over the hill there in the distance. That's how far ahead Aidan Luthwaite is now. So here comes the slipstream for Miles Bond. Is he going to have a go at the chase? He's on the brakes a little later than Luke Swan. He's going to try and draw alongside, almost gets into him, but pulls out just in time. And they'll keep going for a few more corners. I'd imagine by this time next lap, Miles Bond may very well be in front. So we shall see how things go here between these two. A bit more traffic. It looks like that's Paul Saunders or Darren Shannon. I believe it is Darren Shannon. No, it is Paul Saunders. My apologies. Saunders in the sport class, making way for the two of these guys as they continue on. And then there's Patrick Solom in the 9th place running GT4. He's going to go a further lap down on these guys. He's going to pull over and let them go on the way into Griffin's Bend. Nice aggressive turn in from both of these cars, and I think this might be the ideal situation now for Swan if he wants to get his car behavior back on track. He's got that pressure from behind. He's got Miles Bond catching up, and now he'll be paying more attention to his exits. He'll be driving with his eyes on stalks a little bit. So we'll see how this turns out across the top of the mountain. Bond obviously much more confident, but I think Swan starting to get some of that pace back, and that'll certainly help Swan there. Miles Bond with a little too much curb usage across Skyline, and it results in a bit of a messier run through the S's.
It's long shadows now towards the end of the race. So close here. Sometimes you have this thing with the tyres, you just use them up a little bit too much. They get a little bit too hot, and then when they're hot, they're sliding. When they're sliding, they're hot, and you just end up in that hole if you go too hard too early on.
Yeah. Well, this is the only real battle on track at the moment. Only two cars that are within a second of each other out there. There haven't been any further developments in the battle between Mazzomo and Stevens for the American muscle lead, though I'm seeing that Mazzomo's still running faster times than Stevens, despite presumably not taking tyres, and Swan will be happy to see that Henry King lets them go nice and respectfully. Yeah, Daniel Stevens has just been running slower. I'm honestly a little bit flummoxed by that, because we're pretty sure at this point that Mazzomo didn't take tyres in the stop. So why isn't he slower?
I mean, did Stevens only take rears and it's given him a balance that's tough to work with? Made the car a bit understeery and not doing what he wants, and it's just ended up with the balance not giving him confidence to push?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we saw the pit stop there for Stevens, though, didn't we? Both of the tyres on both sides of the car went up at the same time. So I would assume that he took all four tyres.
The car jacks like an old NASCAR, right? Where they put the jack under one side, then they go around, they put the jack under the other side. So you'll see both sides of the car go up if you only change, two fronts or two rears. Whereas you'll only see one side of the thing go up if they only change right side. So he either changed all four or he changed presumably only rears.
Yeah, okay. Well, it might tell a good segment of the story, and maybe that there's potential that Stevens maybe overfueled the car for the final stint, and maybe he's just struggling with a bit too much weight in the car as well, compared to Mazzomo, who only stopped for 18 seconds. Well, regardless, here we go one more time between Luke Swan and Miles Bond. The closest battle on the circuit right now, and it seems like Bond has dialed it back a little. He was aggressive with Swan initially, but it seems he's just waiting for the opportunity now. He knows that there's still 14 minutes to go in the race. He knows that there's no pressure from behind from Van Treek, and there's no chance of them catching Luthwaite, Stewart or Muir at this point. So the battle is only between these two, and Miles Bond can afford to take his time with it.
So we do think everyone's made their final stop. at this point. The only ones I kind of worry about is a couple of those sport cars. If Tony Baker thought he needed to two-stop, some of the others might end up just a little short in the final 5 minutes. And then, of course, depending on where their outright leader is, which is Sam Muir, looks like it's going to be Sam Muir. So, Darren Shannon, Paul Saunders, they might need to be doing, or have been doing, quite a bit of saving for some time.
Yeah, potentially. Well, Tony Baker was able to make it 25 laps max on his... Oh, no. Kyle Stevens. That's... Oof. See those tyre tracks?
That has to be part of car contact, right? If you're there. And apparently Tony Baker with the meatball, look at that. He's got damage.
Oh.
Front right is down.
Oh, no.
For the sport class leader.
You know what? I saw Tony Baker just flash dark on my JRT screen for a second. And I thought, oh, is that a technical issue? No, it was a big problem for the sport class leader who's not going to be able to make it to the apex of the chase. And he'll have to be careful not to get in anyone's way on his way down to the pits.
More than just a down tyre, obviously. There's so much more damage than that. This is how, over Skyline, all by himself, wide, that big snap.
Oh. Dear, oh dear. And something's happened to Kyle Stevens as well, as we saw. I saw those tyre tracks. I think a big pirouette on the exit of Forest Elbow might tell the story. He was trying to make his way past Baker there.
No contact between them, even if he had to check up a bit because he wasn't sure which way Tony Baker was going. Tony Baker didn't know which way Tony Baker was going with that damage at the time, and then he's dealing with something here.
Yeah,
he's all over the road.
Yes. Something very wrong for Kyle Stevens, and then he catches one of the driveways, and then bam, pirouetting around. That's an odd incident there for Kyle Stevens. Maybe, I don't know, a monitor failure of some kind? Or
it's got to be like monitor goes black or something, because the car's still moving, he's still steering, it doesn't like lock straight or lock hard left, but then he just doesn't know where he is.
Yeah, and Baker had further contact with the wall at Forest Elbow there. Yeah.
So Darren Shannon now leads that class. He's gone through to the front of sport classes. Baker's in the pits right now. Saunders was a lap down to Baker, so it'll take a little bit more time for that to cycle through, but you assume that looks like a long repair for Baker. If we didn't see Baker again, that could easily be 10 minutes of damage, right?
Oh, yeah. Like the front suspension's completely destroyed, so that would take a very long time for the virtual crew to repair that. We'll see if Baker can even make his way back out before the end of the race. He might even lose second to Paul Saunders and finish last of the GR86s as this battle is intensifying between Miles Bond and Luke Swan for fourth in GT4. Now Miles sees the chance, and he almost had it coming through the S's. It's a tight entry for Luke Swan, but too deep for Miles Bond. He gets into the wall on the exit of Forest Elbow. And that's that for that battle, I imagine. We've seen Miles Bond have some heavy wall hits in the past and be able to get away with it, but I don't know if he'll be able to draw back up to Swan after this.
Down into the elbow we go, trying to take a wide line and then cut back underneath. Yeah, and then it just washes wide, massive understeer. He's got steering cranked into it, but the nose doesn't go until he hits the wall.
Yeah, and he hit the concrete barrier in a very inconvenient spot there. He's going to come back into the pits. He hasn't got a mechanical black flag, but obviously there's too much damage for him to continue safely. That's a shame for Miles Bond. And depending on how long he's in the pits, he might end up losing fifth to Josh Van Treek. Not too sure at this stage. Well, Darren Shannon is now the leader of the sport class, just been minding his own business over the course of this race. But remember, there's still question marks over whether or not Shannon and Saunders will have to make a second pit stop in the later stages of this race.
I think doesn't matter anymore, because once he comes around this time, Shannon will have a lap on Tony Baker. He can splash to his heart's content here if he just keeps it on the road. Miles Bond still in his pit box. There is Tony Baker. That car is still no good. Paul Saunders will come around and take second from him this lap if Baker doesn't get rolling. Still service for Bond. So Van Treek is through. David Johnson's about to go through in that GT4 class.
Yep, Bond back down to 7th, and you never know, he might end up losing out to Kyle Stevens as well. Still, about a lap's worth, if not more, to make up there for Kyle Stevens. And the question is, in TCR, will James Foster lap Dave Roberts? We saw, let's say, about half an hour ago or so, that the gap was down to 33 seconds for Foster to lap Roberts. Now it's down to under 20 seconds. I don't know if he'll be able to make that up in under 8 minutes of time remaining in the race.
Yeah, and then we're not expecting, keyword expecting, another stop from Roberts at the end here. Or James Foster for that matter.
Yeah, it's a case of 2 long and 1 short when it comes to stint length for TCRs. 25 laps, 24 laps were the first 2 stints for Foster. For Carl Ruolt, who was the only TCR who decided to try something different, he got his long stint done and then did a short 12 lap stint in the middle of the race. So he's going to be fine to the end, I would presume. And
Here's one for you. Can Luthwaite catch Stewart?
Yeah, this is the question, because Luthwaite is once again the fastest car on track, and he's been taking time out of Stewart for the last 3 laps or more running. Half a second gained on the last lap, and so over the last 3 laps, that's about 9/10 of a second or so, nearly a second gained. The gap between them, oh Lord, that is
Saunders?
No, that's the 83. It is. Oh no. Oh God. Sport, the class that no one wants to win, it seems.
He's got a meatball. Baker's got a meatball. Darren Shannon doesn't have a meatball. It looks like the tyres have become really difficult for these cars down here. It's the same.
Yeah, it's the exact same thing that happened to Baker.
It's exactly the same.
Yeah. It's just those bumps going down the hill. We know that the GR86 doesn't like bumps, and it just seems like the suspension was oscillating, the wheels were hopping, the tyres just couldn't keep the grip up, and away he went.
I mean, spring rates, the default spring rates in that 86 are stolen from like door stopping mechanisms or something. They are about a quarter as stiff as you probably would want them to be. It makes the whole car so wallowy like that.
Very hard to get a stable platform in that car, as they've all found out. Well, Sam Muir is continuing on here. A dominant lead now of 11 seconds over Matt Stewart, his teammate. Those 2 BMWs have been magnificent at the front of this field. They have looked in control of this race from about 5 laps in onwards. And, Matt certainly had to work a little bit harder to get to his position, but Muir, to take nothing away from him, has been the picture of consistency. Paul Saunders into the pits then to clear that mechanical black flag. Miles Bond is still not re-emerged from the pits. He's back down to 8th now, and even Patrick Solom is going to make his way past, and Solom is a couple of laps down on the other GT4 cars. So, man, it's all gone wrong for Miles Bond. It looks like that hit to the wall out of Forest Elbow was just too much for him. Dave Roberts then will continue on here in TCR, and you can just see that James Foster is at the other end of Mountain Straight, trying to catch up to him. Will he be able to before the end of the race? We are not sure, but I think the gap might be just a bit too big there. In any case, the only real battle here is between Aidan Luthwaite and the clock to see if he can catch up to Matt Stewart. The battle doesn't look like is going to be changing all that much. There's still 11 seconds between the two of them. And David, we've seen Aidan get some magnificent gaps on a few laps over the course of this race. Times where he was making up nearly 4 seconds in the course of a lap, but there's a lot less cars running now. The traffic is not as tightly packed as it was, and I think Luthwaite might have just stalled out here in third.
Certainly did well through the traffic at some occasions, and that definitely helped him. It went hand in hand with the clean air speed he had compared to some other drivers. The thing you look at is sort of the last pit stop time. Like Stewart's was a couple of seconds shorter than Luthwaite. Did Luthwaite overfuel? Has he done no fuel saving, or is Stewart going to need to save a little bit? Because Stewart stopped then even shorter than race leader Sam Muir, shorter than quite a few of the other cars in class here.
It just seems like Luthwaite's pace has dropped off a little now. Maybe he's just happy with the run to third and is content to keep it there, because Muir and Stewart both ran 2:14.6, 2:14.7. Luthwaite with a 2:15.5, and I didn't see much of a trace of traffic on that lap for him. So yeah, maybe he's just cooling it off towards the end. He knows that he's done enough to bring it home. He's got nearly 20 seconds gap over Luke Swan. I mean, yeah, if I was in Aidan Luthwaite's position, I'd just cruise.
Fastest car last lap, I think, was Sam Muir and the lead of the race. So, yeah, Stewart and Luthwaite not able to really close in anything on that. And then the next closest gap for a lead battle is here, where Mazzomo and him and Stevens inseparable for like an hour and a half, and then comes the final stint. We're like, oh, no prize for Mazzomo. He's come out in the lead. Surely that's going to send us towards an interesting and thrilling conclusion. Apparently not. So really, really well done and patiently managed, I think, from Mazzomo then.
Yeah, he's been driving well. You know, he hasn't been pushing super hard. He's just been smooth and controlled the whole time. The white flag, meanwhile, is going to come out for Sam Muir. One more lap to go at the front of this field with less than a minute remaining on the clock. And now it's just up to Muir and Stewart to bring it home here. We have all BMW podium. Porsche of Luke Swan, 42 seconds back from the lead. Probably still making his way to the elbow at the moment. No, actually, he's back down at the chase. My apologies. Sometimes, with how long these straights are, I get a little bit confused as to how much time is really between cars and their relative positions, etc. I've been doing this commentary thing for a while, but obviously that's one of the many things I still have to work on. But what a drive it's been from Sam Muir. I don't think he's put a foot wrong this whole race. I don't want to curse him, of course. I've already done that once in this race, but yeah, what can you say about Muir that we haven't already said, David?
I can say he did a really, really good job in the high pressure of that one lap qualifying, because we're all we've said about Luthwaite, some great runs through traffic, great clean air pace, fastest lap of the race. The one thing he didn't do was nail a fast but clean qualifying time when the pressure was on in that one lap qualifying. That's what Sam Muir did do. That's why he started up front. He had this clean run, and sure, at times Luthwaite's been significantly faster than him. But it's because it's a work and a job that Luthwaite has set himself to try to catch someone who was calm and composed in the moment of qualifying, like Sam Muir.
Yeah, that pole position for Sam Muir really set him on the path here. Don't forget, Luthwaite, though he made a great run up the field, the entire reason he needed to do that was because he didn't set a time, and he had to start behind the sport class and give up 45 seconds to the likes of the 194 BMW here. One corner to go for Sam Muir. It's been a 4-year break for Panorama Drivers Club, but it's come back in style. And Sam Muir is going to be your first winner of the new era in the BMW M4. Brilliant job.
Next to the line is going to be Darren Shannon in the lead of Sport Class. Well, it looked like Tony Baker's race to win, and then just a momentary inattention around a massively challenging racetrack, massively challenging part there. Took Tony Baker out of this. Darren Shannon inherited the race lead. He's kept his 86 clean to win Sport Class.
Lovely job from Darren Shannon. Again, it was all about survival. And then it was a strategy battle in the American muscle class. Simon Mazzomo with a huge lead now over Daniel Stevens. And doesn't have the fastest lap in the whole class, but consistency and pace management were on Mazzomo's side, as well as nailing that final pit stop. And he's going to take a very well-earned victory in the Ford Mustang. Simon Mazzomo, your American muscle winner. And finally, we have James Foster coming to the chase at the moment. Perhaps one of the most quiet races out there, but it was quiet domination. We barely talked about him at all, and that's for a good reason. He was so far ahead of the rest of the TCR field that no one else even really stood a chance.
Here's what we're talking about. How long it can be for some of these class cars to actually take the checkered flag after the class leader takes it. And Foster, a minute and some later, he did have enough fuel, and he takes a really seriously dominant win in class. Those are the calculations that are tough to do. You can't cut it too fine on that last pit stop for some of these other classes.
Yeah, certainly not. Henry King's going to be the last driver to cross the line to take third in the American muscle class, from what I can see. We're also waiting on Carl Ruwalt to make his way across the line as well. So yeah, King and Ruwalt, they've been solid runners here. Love the retro style livery that King has been running over this whole race here tonight, or today rather. It's still daytime. And well-earned third position for the both of them in their respective classes there, King and Ruwalt. So the race has gone official. The results have gone official, and we'll go through them before we hopefully chat to some of the drivers and say our goodbyes. Sam Muir in the GT4 class, nearly 13 seconds over Matt Stewart, leading home a team 1-2 for them. Aidan Luthwaite, what a recovery, up to third spot after starting way down the field. Luke Swan and Joshua Van Treek will round out the top 5 in the 2 Porsche Caymans, and then we had David Johnson make his way past Kyle Stevens, Patrick Solom, Miles Bond and Hugh McLaughlin, who all had some kind of issue, some kind of crash, or some kind of penalty at some point over the course of that race. Retirements from Milan Peyrach, Edward Foster, Scott Griffiths and Ben Collard. A real shame, especially in Collard's case. It was entirely down to his internet connection. Big shame for him. In TCR, meanwhile, James Foster making it a lap over the rest of the TCR field. Dave Roberts and Carl Ruwalt were locked in battling for quite some time. They finish in that order with Luke Hayden 27 laps down. He had to spend quite a bit of time in the pits, but ultimately would have done the minimum distance, I think, to be classified for a race finish. And then in the American muscle class, Mazzomo winning over Dan Stevens, who we hear now was having screen freezes over the course of the race. That's a shame there. Would have been a much closer battle were it not the case. Henry King finishes a solid third spot ahead of Lachlan Ukiho and Bradley Sini, who both suffered crashes and retired due to damage. And finally, in the sport class, Darren Shannon coming away with what probably from his perspective is a surprise victory. Both Paul Saunders and Tony Baker with massive crashes late on in the race in the exact same location, in the exact same way. Both Baker and Saunders getting a mechanical black flag and having to get to the pits. Cameron Stubber not able to make it to the finish after his earlier crash. Well, we are going to say our goodbyes now. We want to thank you all for tuning in for the return of Panorama Drivers Club. Certainly an exciting race, and we really appreciate the crew at driversclub.net for putting this on after a 4-year break. PDC is back, and what a fun time it has been. I'm Reese Gardner, David Haynes with me in the comms box. We want to thank the organisers at driversclub.net, the drivers for putting on the show, to Worm Paints on the replays, helping us out there, and of course to Jay Kennedy behind the scenes for putting all of this together for the stream here on SimSpeed TV. We'll see you next time.